There's a moment most of us can't quite explain. You meet someone, lock eyes, and suddenly the air feels different. It's as if your body recognizes something your mind hasn't yet processed. A spark, a charge, a pull. You're drawn, sometimes against your own logic, as though gravity itself has chosen sides. We call it chemistry, attraction, destiny. But what is it, really? Why do we feel magnetized to some people and not to others? And perhaps most painfully, why do the people we're pulled to so strongly sometimes end up being the very ones who break us? This book is about that invisible pull, the force that decides who we notice, who we crave, and who we can't seem to let go of, no matter how much it hurts. It's about biology and brain chemistry, but also about childhood patterns, invisible wounds, and the silent scripts that whisper who we should love. It's about why opposites collide, why toxic magnets feel irresistible, and how we can finally untangle passion from pain. I'll be honest, I didn't write this from the safety of an ivory tower. I wrote it because I lived it. I know what it feels like to meet someone who seems like home, only to realize later it was a house built on sand. I've chased chaos, mistaken intensity for intimacy, and learned, painfully, that the strongest pull isn't always the healthiest one. But I also discovered something else. The pull can be rewired. Love doesn't have to be a trap. Attraction doesn't have to be our jailer. When we learn to understand the psychology of desire, the wounds that shape it, and the patterns that repeat it, we unlock the power to choose differently. And that's what this book is here to help you do. To show you that love can be magnetic, without being destructive. That passion can burn, without burning you down. And that the strongest pull of all isn't toward someone else, but toward your own wholeness. So let's step into the mystery together. Let's unravel why we love who we love, and learn how to love better. Introduction. The gravity of desire. The mysterious pull we feel towards certain people. Have you ever met someone and felt an instant connection, as if invisible threads were pulling you together? It's strange, isn't it? This mysterious pull is like the intricate, unseen forces of nature, wrapping around us in ways we often overlook. Sometimes it feels like fate has written our stories in pencil and is extravagantly crafting the pages, leading us directly to certain individuals. Have you noticed how some encounters stay with you, tinged with the weight of something deeper, something you can't quite articulate? These moments can shift your world, although you may not realize it until you find yourself reminiscing about that brief conversation long after it ended. This gravitation toward others is not solely about chemistry. It's a complex dance of our hidden needs and fears, silently communicating, "Come closer." Imagine a crowded room where your eyes find a stranger, and without a word, you feel a shared understanding or an inexplicable sense of comfort. While our minds may try to rationalize these feelings, our hearts often lead the way, pulling us toward individuals who resonate with our inner narratives. Many times, what draws us in is less about their overt traits but more about the intersections of our stories, our past joys, traumas, and the desires that linger like ghosts in the back of our minds. Think about it. When we connect with someone, there are layers of shared backgrounds, common experiences, and sometimes even wounds that make you feel at home. Perhaps a fleeting memory resurfaces, a childhood friend who understood your silent struggles or an acquaintance whose laughter echoed the happiness you crave. The connection could be the missing piece to a puzzle you've been trying to complete. It's crucial to reflect on these encounters, recognizing that they may have been breadcrumbs leading us back to ourselves, whispering secrets we were too scared to acknowledge. Recognizing the significance of this pull can change your perspective on relationships and interactions. Instead of dismissing feelings of attraction or camaraderie as mere chance, consider keeping a journal to jot down these moments. Not just names and faces, but the feelings stirred and the reasons behind them. This practice can help shed light on the deeper threads weaving through your life. While some connections fade like old photographs, others can spark change, rooted in a genuine understanding and shared vulnerability that has the potential to transform how you view your interactions. The next time you accidentally run into someone who seems to understand your unspoken thoughts, lean into that connection. Embrace the magic of your shared journey, however brief. Life is too short to ignore that soft tug at your heart. Go ahead, reach out. You never know what stories might unfold or the part they might play in your life's intricate narrative. Let every connection remind you that, at our core, we are all searching for someone who sees us truly. Attraction as both gift and trap. We often imagine attraction as this invisible thread pulling us towards someone, like gravity but tangled with desire and mystery. It feels like a force outside us, compelling and uncontrollable. But what if attraction isn't just a magical magnet? What if it's both a blessing and a snare? It wakes us up to other people, sparks the pulse in our veins, and colors the world with possibility. That thrill in a glance, the way your heart stutters when someone's near, those moments are gifts. They remind us we're alive, vibrant, and hungry for connection. Yet, that same pull can catch us off guard, swallowing us in illusions or longing that only swells our loneliness beneath the surface. Sometimes attraction leads us to see only what we want, blinding us to the quiet truths beneath the charm, the flickers of discomfort we push away because they're too close to our own fears. It's like reaching for a flame. You feel the warmth, but your fingers might get burned. We don't talk enough about how attraction draws out parts of ourselves that are radiant and shadowy all at once. On one hand, attraction is a spark that reminds us of our fire. It can open us to joy, tenderness, and unexpected laughter that bubbles up when we least expect it. That sudden connection, whether it's with a stranger on the street or someone who's been quietly beside us all along, teaches us about what makes our hearts beat faster. It's the adrenaline and the soft sigh, the quickened breath and the shy smile that says, "You see me." At its best, attraction is a doorway to deeper understanding, a kind of invitation to step closer, not just to others, but to parts of ourselves that feel underused or unseen. But here's the catch: that same invitation can be a hall of mirrors, where what pulls us in is really just a reflection of the parts we avoid or don't understand. Sometimes attraction masks loneliness with excitement, or desperation with hope. It can tie us to someone who triggers old wounds, or keeps us circling in patterns that don't bring real closeness but pain disguised as intensity. This dual nature means attraction is as much about what's inside us as what's outside. It's not just about the person who's caught our eye, but about how our own stories, fears, and dreams reach out in that moment. The trick lies in learning to recognize when attraction illuminates and when it shadows. It's a dance between being drawn in and holding space to look around and notice what's really happening, the parts that make us feel alive and the parts that whisper caution but are easy to ignore. Attraction is a gift because it wakes us up, but it can become a trap if we forget to ask questions or hold gentle curiosity for what's beneath the surface. Maybe the real magic is in carrying both the gift and the trap lightly, with a little humor and a lot of honesty. Understanding desire isn't just about following the surface sparkle, it's about acknowledging the shadows it casts. Desire plays out in layers, some bright and sweet like sunlight catching a dropped glass, others murky and tangled, the kind of shadows that stretch long when the day is done. These shadows might be the fear of being alone, old disappointments, or wounds from past heartbreaks that still bleed quietly. When you realize that attraction pulls at those hidden places too, it becomes less confusing. The urge to chase someone who seems perfect might really be a hush for a deep part of you that feels unseen. Or the repeated pull toward a certain kind of person might echo an old story you've been carrying, even when you don't want to admit it. Recognizing these layers can feel scary. Nobody likes to see their cracks, but it also invites kindness toward yourself. You start to see that your urge to connect isn't wrong or simple. It's messy, rich, and full of contradictions. When you hold the idea that attraction lights up both your beauty and your edges, you can start to approach it differently. Instead of rushing headlong and hoping the feeling will last, you slow down just enough to notice what's really stirring inside. Maybe the person who attracts you triggers a familiar ache or reminds you of a time you felt small and invisible. Maybe they hold up a mirror, showing you a piece of yourself you've tucked away for too long. This kind of awareness doesn't have to kill the spark. It can deepen it, add layers to the story. Instead of being swept away, you become a dancer who knows some steps by heart, who can laugh at the missteps and catch the rhythm that aligns with your truth. It's not about being perfect or always knowing what's happening. It's about learning to hold the shadows softly, to be tender with the parts of yourself that fear rejection or pain, while still allowing yourself to want, to reach, to fall. So here's a practical thought. The next time attraction grabs you and your heart hammers in your chest like a warning and a welcome all at once, pause for a moment. Ask yourself quietly, what is this pulling up inside me? What shadows am I seeing reflected here? You don't have to untangle everything right away. Just noticing is enough to start. Maybe journaling how you feel, the silly, the sweet, and the confusing parts, or talking it out with someone who listens without trying to fix. Or simply sitting with the feeling, like you'd hold a cup of hot tea, letting it warm you without rushing to drink. This kind of gentle curiosity can help you touch both the gift and the trap without losing your footing. Attraction isn't a clue to chase blindly. It's more like a trembling leaf floating on a river you're learning to navigate. Sometimes you float with it, sometimes you steady yourself on the shore, but you keep your eyes open for the deeper currents beneath the surface. A personal story, meeting someone who felt like home, yet turned into heartbreak. It started with a strange sort of ease, like slipping into your favorite pair of old shoes. I met her on a rainy Tuesday, when the city smelled like wet asphalt and possibility. She stood there, looking at a shop window, and instantly, I felt my heart skip a beat, not with attraction alone, but with a strange familiarity. Like I'd known her in another life, or maybe I'd been searching for someone just like her without even realizing. We struck up a conversation that felt effortless, like two pieces of a puzzle finally clicking together. In those moments, it was as if the universe had rearranged itself to bring me to her, to finally feel like I belonged somewhere. There was a quiet glow about her, a warmth that made my guard drop almost instantly. The way she laughed, soft and honest, made my chest feel lighter. It's rare to meet someone who doesn't just fill the space next to you but seems to fill the very air around you with a gentle reassurance. I found myself sharing parts of myself I'd kept hidden, about hopes, fears, silly childhood memories, all without that uncomfortable feeling of being judged. And in return, she opened up about her own stories, her cracks showing just enough to make her real. It was as if our souls had found a secret language, and for a brief moment, everything else faded away. She looked at me as if I were home, as if I'd been waiting in the wings for this very moment to walk onto the stage of my life. For weeks, it felt like walking in a dream where the world was softer, colors somehow brighter, and time moved just a little slower. I wanted to hold on to that feeling forever, clinging to the hope that this was what home really meant, feeling safe, understood, and completely seen. I started imagining a future where we shared mornings over coffee and nights wrapped in quiet comfort. Every shared smile became a promise, every look a vow that I had finally found someone who could make all my scattered pieces feel whole. I knew, deep down, I'd stumbled into something rare, a connection that made my heart swell with possibility. It was that feeling of finding a place where you could breathe freely, finally unburdened by outside worries, just for a fleeting moment. It felt like, in her, I had finally discovered the missing piece I'd been unknowingly searching for all along. But illusion is a funny thing. It whispers sweet lies in your ear just long enough to make you forget the cracks beneath. That feeling of absolute belonging, that sense of this is it, often masks the reality waiting in the shadows. We want to believe in what we've found, especially when it feels like someone has finally found their way home in us. The mind clings tightly to that hope, constructing stories about forever and happily ever after, even if the heart knows better. When you're longing for something so badly, your desire can blind you to the signs that it's not quite right, or that it's destined to be temporary. The more I believed she was my home, the more I ignored the subtle signals telling me that this story might not last. As time went on, the cracks appeared, small at first, like faint fractures in a glass you think you can fix. She grew distant in ways I hadn't noticed initially. Missed calls, half-hearted replies, a tone that didn't quite fit the warmth of before. I clung to the memories, replaying our best moments like pictures in a photo album I refused to close. It felt heartbreaking realizing that what I'd held onto so tightly was fragile, just a reflection of my yearning more than a truth. The ideal I had built up in my mind, the one where she was home, was beginning to crumble, revealing the silent truth that desire often blinds us to reality. Our minds can turn simple hope into an elaborate fortress, keeping us safe from disappointment until the walls come crashing down and leave us raw. It's strange, isn't it? How our mind's need for comfort can sometimes turn what was real into an illusion we'd rather cling to than face the harder truth. Sometimes, heartbreak sneaks in quietly, like a whisper in the middle of the night. It's not always loud or dramatic, more like a faint ache deep inside that grows until it fills every corner of your chest. That ache teaches us something important, that wanting something badly enough can make us overlook what's obvious. That clinginess to a fleeting illusion can keep us from seeing the real story that's unfolding. The truth is, we often fall in love with the idea of someone more vividly than who they really are. And that's what makes heartbreak so painful, because it's not just about losing someone, it's about losing the hope we built around them. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't the ending but realizing the illusion we believed in wasn't real at all, only a shimmering trick of the mind. The real lesson comes when we learn to see the cracks early enough, to accept that sometimes what we think is home is just a mirage, a reflection of our own longing, not a fixed place where we belong. So, I've learned that holding on too tight to what feels like home can make it all slip away faster. That clinging creates a false sense of security when, in reality, the only true safety comes from understanding that nothing stays still, and that love, like life, is always shifting. Letting go, even of what once felt perfect, is the only way to find something real again. And maybe, just maybe, the heartbreak teaches us to enjoy the moments of true connection without trying to lock them into a forever that might never come. That way, we stay open to new beginnings, ready in the knowledge that no feeling, no person, is ever truly ours to hold forever, only to cherish while they last, and learn from when they don't. Chapter 1. The Physics of Attraction. Biological sparks, dopamine, oxytocin, and why our brains crave intensity. Dopamine is the little firecracker that ignites our excitement in those thrilling moments of attraction. Think about it, that flutter in your stomach when you catch someone's eye, the rush of anticipation when you receive a text from them. It's not just butterflies, it's dopamine painting the scene with vivid colors. This chemical floods our brains when we feel pleasure or excitement. Suddenly, everything feels alive, as if the world was dipped in a bright hue of urgency. We crave more of that high, pushing us to seek out those heart-pounding experiences, whether it's a first date or simply bumping into that special someone. But here's the catch. This chase for dopamine-driven intensity can sometimes lead us into a labyrinth of fleeting moments. When we ride that euphoric wave of attraction, we're often pushed to seek the next rush, sometimes overlooking the beauty that lies in the ordinary. We like shiny things that make our hearts race, but every burst of dopamine reminds us that satisfaction is often a temporary state. After an exhilarating night out or a long-awaited reunion, a familiar emptiness can settle in. Our brain starts to nudge us to seek out that next big hit, which leads to a cycle of longing and fleeting satisfaction. Enter oxytocin, often dubbed the love hormone. This little gem creates the sense of connection, warmth, and trust we feel when we cuddle with someone special or share a heartfelt conversation. It's the comforting embrace after an intense dopamine rush that reminds us that real connection goes beyond the thrill. It's about sharing secrets, laughter, and those quiet moments together. Oxytocin is what transforms a passionate encounter into something more meaningful. It creates the memories that stick with us long after the initial excitement fades. When dopamine peaks, oxytocin pulls us back into a space of safety, laying the foundation for deeper bonds. As you navigate relationships, remember this balance. Seek out those electric moments but also cherish the quieter ones, where connection blooms and deepens. Recognizing the chemistry at play can lead to a more fulfilling experience. Maybe next time you feel that rush, pause and appreciate the warmth that follows, savoring both the excitement of the chase and the comfort of closeness. Breathe in this duality, as it paints life with richness and depth. Why attraction often overrides logic. There's a curious thing about the human brain. It's wired to notice, react to, and often prioritize immediate chemistry before it even checks in with reason. Imagine your mind as an ancient house, with one foot firmly planted in present-day logic and the other rooted deep in primal instincts. When attraction kicks in, it's like the primal side throws the modern brain out the window, shouting louder than any carefully weighed thought ever could. That sudden pull, the flutter in your stomach or the intense focus on someone's laugh, it's not your rational mind whispering in your ear, but a deep, gut-level alarm bell. Logic tries to sneak in with spreadsheets and pros and cons, but for a moment, it's stuck outside, watching as attraction rewires your priorities to something immediate and felt, not planned or analyzed. That flicker you feel, maybe in a glance or a brush of a hand, is far from random. Our brains are cut from a cloth that evolved long before phones, Tinder swipes, or even complex social contracts. Back then, survival depended on quick judgments, on sensing safety or danger in an instant. That same nervous system now lights up when you feel drawn to someone, telling you pay attention before your mind can elbow in with logic. It's like smelling smoke and running before realizing it's just toast burning in the kitchen. Attraction bypasses careful calculation because it's speaking a language older than speech itself. When you notice how your heart picks favorites before your brain registers details, you're seeing this ancient wiring in action. Think about moments when you caught yourself ignoring red flags because something about the person just felt right. Your logical mind might have lined up reasons to step back, but the pull was stronger. This is because attraction taps into parts of the brain tied to reward and craving, flooding your system with chemicals that blur judgment. It's why you might remember how their smile made the world stop rather than the awkward things they said later. The brain prioritizes what sparks emotion and connection, even if the facts don't add up. When attraction is boiling, the scales of reasoning tip heavily toward sensation, not sense. This force of attraction isn't just poetic fluff, it's steeped in evolutionary pressure. Long ago, choosing a partner wasn't about shared playlists or witty banter but about survival and passing on genes. Your body and brain, evolved through countless generations, are still wired to respond to signals that once meant health, fertility, and safety. This means attraction can feel overwhelming and out of our hands because it's part of a biological chorus demanding attention. You can try to argue yourself out of a crush, but the body's chemistry, the pulse, the warmth, the rush, keeps singing a louder song. When attraction overwhelms logic, it's also pulling you into an emotional landscape that's inherently wild and unpredictable. Emotions don't follow neat rules. They erupt, falter, and swirl, often without clear explanations. That chaotic feeling when you're drawn to someone who doesn't seem like the safe or reasonable choice. That's your evolutionary wiring acting like a mischievous puppeteer, reminding you that survival once required taking emotional risks. Sometimes, what feels like irrational passion is the brain's way of saying, here's your chance to connect deeply, or at least try. Understanding that attraction is both a physical reaction and a deeply emotional experience can help you navigate the confusing pull it creates. Instead of fighting between head and heart, leaning into awareness may give you space to notice these feelings without being swept up in them too quickly. Ask yourself what the attraction is really stirring up inside: longing, hope, fear, or maybe a craving for connection. See if you can separate the raw feeling from the story your mind is telling to justify or fight it. The more you can witness attraction as something natural and sometimes messy, the less power it has to hijack your decisions. So the next time you find yourself fumbling for reason because the person across the room or on the other side of the screen makes your chest tighten or your mind spin, pause for a moment. Feel the rush, acknowledge the wildness, and remind yourself that what you're experiencing is as old as humans themselves. You don't have to let attraction bulldoze logic, but knowing why it shouts louder can give you a sliver of space to breathe, to choose, to decide with a clearer eye. Sometimes just naming the power of this pull helps loosen its grip. When your body says go, your mind doesn't have to say no. Instead, it can whisper back with curiosity, why? The myth: love at first sight versus love built over time. Many of us grow up hearing stories about that instant butterfly feeling, the moment when two people lock eyes and suddenly everything falls into place. It sounds magical, like discovering a missing piece of ourselves in a blink. But real love? It's rarely that simple or swift. This myth suggests love is about that lightning strike, a sweep of emotion that hits hard and fades just as quickly, leaving us longing for some grand event. In truth, what we often mistake for love at first sight is more like infatuation or chemistry. Intense, yes, but not the full weight of love. The quiet, subtle work of building trust, understanding, and care seldom makes a headline. It's the silent undercurrent that keeps a relationship steady through storms and sunshine. When lovers assume that love is an instant spark, they overlook those countless moments that shape who we end up loving. Those feints of connection over shared coffee, the patience in waiting out a bad day, the little acts that show someone cares. These aren't cinematic moments, but real, human experiences. Because love isn't just feeling a flutter, it's inviting someone into your world, revealing your cracks and your strengths gradually, over time. It's watching someone stumble and choosing to stay, noticing the small things that make them uniquely human. That kind of love doesn't come rushing in like an explosion. Instead, it seeps in slowly, often unnoticed, until one day we realize we've been building something far more enduring than a fleeting moment of awe. Real connection works like a dance, an awkward first step, followed by patience and repeated tries. It's not about finding someone who instantly completes you, but about discovering someone whose quirks, fears, and dreams slowly peel away your defenses. Love built over time demands curiosity, an eagerness to understand, even when it's uncomfortable or goes against your expectations. It also asks for patience, because genuine bonds don't emerge from racing towards some finish line. Instead, it's in those small, everyday moments, listening to someone rant about work, sharing a quiet stare across the dinner table, that trust begins to grow. When we stay curious and attentive to these little exchanges, we open the door for a real, honest connection to take root. This kind of love isn't flashy or dramatic, but is rooted in consistency and intent. It means accepting that your partner isn't perfect and you won't always love their flaws at first glance. But as time passes, with genuine effort, those quirks can become endearing. It's a slow unfolding, like a flower blooming day by day rather than all at once. Building love this way asks us to stay present and to understand that the most meaningful relationships are cultivated, not stumbled upon. It's about choosing each other every day, through dull routines and sparkling moments alike, knowing that genuine connection is made through patience and shared experiences, not quick sparks that fade just as fast. A practical tip: practice noticing what makes someone uniquely them. Instead of rushing to feel something or looking for signs of instant chemistry, give yourself permission to stay curious over time. It's in those little moments, when you hold back judgment or rush to fix things, that real bonds start to take hold. Sometimes, slowing down just enough to pay attention is all it takes to build a love that endures. Practice being patient with yourself and others. Love is less a lightning bolt and more a gentle, persistent rain nourishing the roots of something real. Chapter 2. The Blueprint of the Heart. Childhood attachments as the silent scriptwriters of our adult relationships. Childhood is a curious time, where innocence and wonder dance hand in hand. The relationships we form during these early years are like the intricate stitches in a quilt. They connect our experiences and shape how we interact with the world as adults. Imagine that every embrace, every soothing word, and each moment of unyielding support is a thread weaving intricate patterns of love, safety, and sometimes, fear. These patterns become our expectations, subtly guiding our choices and reactions in adult romance. Whether it's seeking another warm presence or running away from intimacy, these deeply ingrained scripts are often beyond our conscious awareness. They operate in the background like an old movie playing, influencing how we respond to love, conflict, and deep connection without us even realizing it. Think about a classic childhood experience. Perhaps the first time you skinned your knee or faced your first crush. How did your caregivers react? Did you receive comfort, or were you brushed off? These moments become the blueprint for navigating adult relationships. For instance, a child comforted with warmth and care may grow into an adult who seeks closeness and reassurance in intimate relationships. On the other hand, a child who learned that vulnerability was met with dismissal may develop a stance of independence, avoiding emotional intimacy at all costs. The emotional environment we grow up in dictates the reactions we bring into adulthood, knitting our attachment styles into a fabric that can either keep us warm or leave us frayed at the edges. Recognizing these early attachment scripts offers a chance to rewrite the narrative. Imagine for a moment how liberating it could be to understand that certain habits or fears in love are not an inherent part of your personality but rather echoes of the past. This awareness is like finding an old cookbook filled with recipes that bring both comfort and unpleasant memories. You may choose to keep some favorites while letting go of dishes that don't serve you anymore. By gently reflecting on your childhood relationships, you can begin to surface those underlying beliefs embedded in your heart. Allowing yourself the grace to explore these influences encourages a reimagining of what connection can look like for you now. It opens the door to vulnerable conversations, authentic love, and meaningful relationships. It's not enough to merely recognize these patterns. We must be willing to face them, reframe our narratives, and approach relationships with a fresh perspective. Try taking small steps toward embracing change. Start by asking yourself, what did I feel during those formative moments? How do they echo in my present relationships? Journaling these thoughts can create space for clarity. As you take stock of your emotional landscape, you may find that old scripts can be rewritten with the ink of new experiences, leading to richer connections that reflect who you truly are, rather than who you were taught to be. Surround yourself with supportive relationships that encourage growth and healing. Remember, every whisper of vulnerability you offer is part of a brave journey back to the self who deserves unconditional love. Consider this: The heart is capable of deep resilience. So, as you work to gently rewrite those scripts, take small, intentional actions that align with your new understanding. Today, practice reaching out to someone close to you. Share a thought or feeling you've kept to yourself. In that moment of connection, you're not just sharing words, you're charting a new path for how you relate to others. Each time you do this, you're creating a new thread in the fabric of your being, one that aligns with authenticity and openness, paving the way for richer relationships that reflect your true self. Why familiar patterns feel magnetic, even when they hurt us. We keep circling back to what's familiar, don't we? Even if it scratches at the edges of our peace or bruises our hearts, it still feels like home. There's a strange kind of safety tucked inside repetition. The same arguments, the same choices, the same people who make us both laugh and cry. Familiarity wraps itself around us like a well-worn sweater, frayed and faded but comforting nonetheless. Our memories act like a GPS stuck on a loop, steering us toward old places, old faces, even when the signs warn us to take a new route. It's almost as if our brains crave the predictable rhythm, because chaos feels like a stranger, and strangers unsettle us in ways we sometimes cannot handle. Why does familiarity offer this so-called refuge, even when it's tangled with pain? It comes down to how our minds and bodies have learned to map the world. The brain is a pattern-making machine, wired to spot and repeat what it recognizes because that's how survival works. When something is familiar, our bodies release a cocktail of chemicals that signals, "This is normal. I can relax." It's a bit like how the smell of rain on a dusty street can pull us back to childhood summers, or how the crack in a favorite teacup reminds us of a moment long gone. Even if the memories are sharp-edged, the quick dopamine hit from recognition soothes us. The pain, oddly enough, becomes part of the pattern, like a recurring note in a song we keep humming, even when it's off-key. It's not just the brain, though. Our emotions have a stubborn streak too. When you've grown up in a house where love was wrapped in chaos, or when every burst of kindness came with a sting, your emotional heart gets trained to long for exactly that. It's the puzzle that doesn't quite fit but somehow feels like the only picture you've ever known. That ache you try to push away can feel like a silent promise. This is what love looks like. Walking away from it threatens a kind of loneliness that feels darker than any hurt. So instead, we lean in, heart and all, repeating patterns because stepping into the unknown is like standing on the edge of a vast ocean without a life vest. Understanding why these patterns cling so tightly helps unwrap what love actually means. It's more than a choice or a feeling, it's a wiring deep within our hearts. Imagine a song you can't get out of your head, one that cycles endlessly, even when it's off-tempo and grating your nerves. That's love in this sense, a melody scored long ago, sometimes by invisible hands, etched into the very way you connect with the world. It blurs the lines between what we want and what we recognize. Like reaching for a flame to feel warm, even when we know it might burn us, love pulls us toward the familiar even if that familiarity is a slow ache. Love isn't always the grand, sweeping feeling with fireworks and perfect timing. Often, it's a faint, almost stubborn echo that repeats in the background of our days, calling us back to what we've known, even if our soul screams to run in the opposite direction. This isn't about weakness, it's about the almost biological imprint of longing that refuses to be shut off. It can feel like both a trap and a refuge, squeezed into the tight space between hope and fear. That's why even after a breakup that left us raw or a friendship that slowly poisoned our sense of worth, the memory lingers. The heart remembers the music it's learned to dance to, no matter how clumsy the steps become over time. Here's a quiet thought to carry with you. The urge to return to familiar pain is not a failing, but a kind of survival. Our minds are trying to protect us from the unknown, and our hearts are echoing a song they learned long ago. Recognizing this is like spotting a worn path in a forest. You might choose to walk it again or find a new way forward, but either way, you're no longer lost in the dark. The first step toward change often starts with softly noticing the pull, without judgment or blame. And sometimes, simply naming the pattern is like opening a window in a stuffy room, letting fresh air in and giving your soul a chance to breathe. Love as a compass that sometimes points back to unfinished maps. Love feels like a compass, doesn't it? There's this almost instinctive pull when it's working well, guiding us through moments that make our hearts race or soften. But sometimes, that needle spins unpredictably, pointing us back to places we thought we'd left behind. It's like love has a mischievous streak, leading us not always forward but sometimes in circles or to familiar, yet unfinished, terrain. That odd feeling of revisiting old loves, old arguments, or old feelings, that's part of love's quirks. It's not flawed, it's honest. Love's way of whispering, hey, you forgot this part, even if you'd rather forget it altogether. This directional dance reveals something fascinating about our hearts. They carry maps that aren't entirely drawn. Think of the places on those maps, marked with question marks, shaded in dark or bright, filled with wonder or confusion. Sometimes, we bump into these boundaries, thinking we've closed the chapter, only to find that the map's edges are fuzzy. Love reminds us that we're not finished charting ourselves. The needle flicks when we're least ready, nudging us to look back at old chapters or revisit a conversation left hanging. It's a reminder that perhaps love isn't about perfect destinations but about learning how to navigate what's still uncharted within us. When love points backward, it stings a little. We might feel like we're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's where honesty about our own unfinished maps becomes useful. Sometimes, the places we revisit aren't even about the other person, but about how we see ourselves. Did we leave a question hanging? Do we still carry regrets? These moments aren't failures, they're invitations to understand what parts of ourselves need more tending. Sometimes, love's compass draws us back because certain feelings, unresolved or unspoken, still have lessons to teach. It's as if our hearts are stubborn explorers, refusing to skip over the parts that hold true meaning, no matter how tempted we are to turn away. It's funny how love's unpredictability can feel like a burden, but really, it's a gift wrapped in mystery. This compass, with its quirks and wobbles, keeps us awake to what's really happening inside. When the needle drifts back into old territory, maybe it's nudging us to reconsider, to sit with those feelings one more time. Moving forward isn't always about leaving things behind. Sometimes, it's about bringing what was fleeting or hidden into the light. Love's twists remind us that life isn't a straight line, and growth often means circling back, sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully. The challenge becomes learning how to trust that odd, unpredictable needle, believing it's guiding us, even when it points us to places we'd rather forget or ignore. The truth is, our hearts are not finished maps. They carry layers and stories we've yet to fully understand. Each wandering back can teach us more about our desires, fears, and hopes. Maybe it's time to stop fighting the return journey and see it as part of the process, an unspoken chapter in the story of who we are. Love, in its messy way, asks us to hold space for the parts of us still discovering, still questioning. The real navigation isn't just about reaching a destination but learning how to walk with the uncertainty, trusting that every curve and dead end pushes us closer to wholeness. Listen closely when the compass swings unexpectedly. Maybe that's love helping you find a hidden path, even if it's back to a place you thought was behind you. Sometimes, the unfinished maps are simply signs that your heart still holds questions worth exploring. So maybe, instead of trying to erase or avoid those moments, you let yourself sit with them. Pay attention to what they reveal about your deepest needs. Because in those quiet, resistant seconds, love says, there's more here than you've seen, more to learn, more to heal, more to love. A practical way to navigate these moments is to keep a small journal. Write down what surfaces when love pulls you back. Notice if certain feelings or memories repeat. See them as clues rather than problems. Sometimes, mapping what feels unresolved can help you understand what needs to stay, what needs to be let go, and what still requires attention. When love points back unexpectedly, it's not a sign of failure but a chance to re-examine. Like wandering through a house full of secret rooms, you might find that some doors need opening again. That's part of loving, really, embracing the unexpected, trusting that your inner map is still in progress. Chapter 3. Wounds that whisper. How old pain creates invisible signals. Childhood wounds often linger in our psyches, subtly influencing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors throughout life. These invisible signals can manifest as quiet nudges that we might dismiss as mere quirks. Perhaps it's the way you flinch when someone raises their voice or how you react defensively to a casual critique. These feelings might seem unwarranted, but they whisper stories of deep-rooted experiences we sometimes forget we carried. There's a certain weight that comes with past pain that can color our present moments, often without us even realizing. When we fail to acknowledge the signs of internal distress, we risk repeating patterns that stem from earlier experiences. Consider how certain habits might reflect unresolved pain. You might find yourself overly cautious in relationships, constantly preparing for abandonment because, deep down, part of you still believes you're not worth sticking around for. This emotional residue from childhood doesn't just fade away. It creates invisible scripts that guide how we interact with the world. It's crucial to recognize these patterns so they don't guide the narrative of our lives in unhealthy ways. Understanding these invisible signals invites us to listen to the internal language that our emotions speak. Some days, that inner voice may just sound like an ache beneath the surface, while other days, it might scream for attention. Recognizing these feelings takes practice. It can be helpful to ask yourself questions about your reactions. What is this feeling reminding me of? Why do I feel threatened in this situation? Sometimes, simply sitting with the discomfort can lead to insights. Your mind might drift back to moments where you felt vulnerable or unheard. Allowing yourself to feel that pain can begin the process of unearthing hidden truths. As we cultivate the courage to listen inwardly, we create space for healing. Embracing the unspoken truths of our past allows us to connect more deeply with those around us. When we understand our own stories, we become more empathetic listeners in others' narratives. Those moments of vulnerability shared can lead to profound connections, making the weight of pain feel a little lighter, as if we were walking alongside someone who bears the same scars. Gathering these shared experiences reminds us that we are not alone in our experiences of hurt, and it encourages us to be kinder to ourselves in the process. Take a moment to pause and consider this. What is one painful moment from your past that still speaks to you today? It could be something that bubbles up during a tough encounter or a familiar feeling that grips you unexpectedly. Instead of brushing it aside, sit with it for a while. Write it down, draw it out, or simply reflect on it as you breathe. Let it exist without judgment. This practice can help expose the invisible signals that guide your actions. Over time, confronting these shadows can show pathways to healing, reminding you that while the hurt might linger, it doesn't have to dictate your present or future. Why we confuse chaos with passion. The rush of emotion that chaos brings can feel like standing in the middle of a thunderstorm and thinking it's a fireworks show. Your heart hammers, thoughts scatter, and every moment pulses with such raw energy that it's easy to mistake the noise for something deeper, like passion. But passion isn't the flashing lightning or the crashing thunder. It's more like the steady glow after the storm settles. When life spins wildly out of control, the dizziness confuses us. Our minds race, adrenaline floods the system, and suddenly, what feels urgent and loud gets branded as something meaningful. When you're caught in chaos, the taste of that intensity can be intoxicating, almost addictive. It's like biting into a chili pepper thinking you're just enjoying the heat, but really, you're setting off your entire senses with alarm bells. Passion has the fire, sure, but chaos is the wildfire that can burn everything down if left unchecked. That confusion, thinking non-stop drama or emotional turbulence signals love, excitement, or purpose, is a trap many fall into. It's easier to cling to something stormy than to sit quietly with what actually feels good and true. Take a moment to think about the times you've been overwhelmed in relationships or projects where everything seemed urgent and messy. You might have told yourself, this is what passion looks like. But later, looking back with clearer eyes, it often turns out that was chaos masquerading as drive. The shouting, the mood swings, the frantic pace become a smoke screen, hiding the lack of direction or real connection beneath. Passion fuels creation, but chaos only spins wheels. The crash, the emotional hangover, it's all because we confuse fire with noise. Learning to tell the difference between the storm and the song inside you is like learning to listen while everything else screams. There's a quiet voice that isn't demanding or loud, but steady and soft. It feels less like a roar and more like a slow, deep breath in the middle of all the madness. If chaos is a wild river, passion is the warm pool where the water settles. The trick is catching yourself before you get swept downstream and tuning in to what stays with you once the loudest waves have crashed. Quiet moments often feel uncomfortable because we've been wired to crave excitement and drama, mistaking them for proof of feeling alive. But passion is patient. It isn't frantic. It's in the way your mind settles on a few things that matter instead of flitting wildly from one crisis to another. It's the feeling of sitting with a piece of music or a book so fully that the outside world fades, not because it's busy or noisy, but because your attention is calm and deep. That's the difference between chaos luring you with its roar and passion inviting you into its stillness. One way to practice is to notice how your body feels when you think you're passionate about something. Does your chest tighten like a storm is coming? Or does it soften like sunlight through a window? Can you breathe easily? Or are you holding your breath like you're bracing for an explosion? These subtle signs are often drowned out by the bigger drama, but tuning into those whispers can help you separate what's fueling you from what's draining you. Learning to catch that quiet isn't about shutting out excitement, but about knowing which excitement builds you up and which just spins you in circles. Here's a small, practical step. The next time you feel intense emotion rising, pause. Take 10 slow breaths and ask yourself, not what's making your heart race, but what makes it settle. Notice if the feeling stays or if it fizzles out as the noise dies down. That pause, that space, is where passion lives, away from chaos's clamor. Real-world narrative: I knew he wasn't good for me, but the pull was unbearable. There was that instant when a tiny voice inside refused to shout loudly but whispered enough for me to hear. It was in the way my stomach twisted when I thought about him, a quiet alarm telling me stay back, but my feet moved forward anyway. He wasn't good for me. Something in his eyes, in the words he spared, made it clear he never really cared the way I needed. Still, every time he looked at me, that pull, that undeniable force, pulled me in closer as if I was a moth circling a flame. It's funny how something that clearly burns you can feel so irresistible in the moment. Like being caught in a current, dangerous, confusing, and still, you let yourself go, hoping maybe this time the water won't drown you. I knew he was trouble, but my heart kept whispering, just one more moment, and suddenly the truth seemed like a faint echo I couldn't reach. It was the kind of knowing that settles deep like a pebble in your shoe, small but insistent, nagging you every step. I would tell myself, you deserve better, but then I'd remember how he'd made me feel alive, even when that life was coated in chaos or broken promises. That magnetic quality, whether or not I wanted to admit it, felt like the only thing I could cling to when everything else around me felt uncertain. Our minds are strange that way. They cling to comfort, even if it hurts. I wasn't blind to the signs, yet each time I saw them, I'd ignore the warning bells and convince myself that maybe somehow, I could fix what was already broken. That pull, heavy and relentless, kept me glued to a hope I knew was fading. Still, in that moment, I couldn't stop myself from falling deeper even as my wings threatened to melt. There's a way our subconscious sneaks truths past the busy noise of our mind, hiding them in little cracks we're too afraid to look into. Sometimes, the feeling deep inside us is a warning letter, written in faint ink we ignore because facing it would mean admitting vulnerability or losing what we think keeps us safe. Love has a funny way of sticking to our wounds, like glue that's stubborn and messy. We tell ourselves stories about the love that keeps us anchored, even if it's pulling apart pieces of us slowly. It's easier, sometimes, to cling to what's familiar, no matter how destructive, than to face the emptiness that might follow if we let go. That comfort, even if it's a twisted kind, acts like a warm blanket on a cold night, masking the ache that's always present beneath. But sooner or later, the pain starts to spill over, no longer ignorable. That's when the balance tips, when the pain outweighs the comfort, and the subconscious finally whispers what the heart refused to listen to aloud. Love can become a tangled knot, festering with memories of good times blending into regret. We hold on to it because it's familiar, because it's what we've grown used to, even if it tears us apart. The part of us that screams in the night, the part we often ignore, knows that holding on is sometimes more about fear than love. That whisper gets stronger, louder, until it becomes impossible to dismiss. It's the ache beneath your ribs during quiet moments, the tightness in your throat when you avoid looking in the mirror. The truth is, love isn't meant to hurt this intensely. Our wounds are not medals we wear with pride, they're signposts telling us maybe, just maybe, it's time to loosen our grip. That's when the internal voice shifts, it stops whispering softly and starts demanding, enough, because living inside that chaos is no longer a choice, but an ongoing battle to breathe through the ache. Sometimes, understanding comes as a quiet kiss from the universe, one that gently pulls the curtains closed on the story you've been desperately holding on to. Learning to feel the truth without running from it takes practice. Recognizing the moment when pain becomes a signal that it's time to let go, rather than stay stuck in the comfort of what's known, is freeing. It's about listening to those subtle cues your body sends, feeling the tension in your shoulders or the heaviness in your chest when you think about staying versus going. When love is trying to teach you something, it's often wrapped in pain, asking you to pay attention. It may seem impossible at first, but letting the pain speak instead of silencing it can open the door to real healing. That's where growth begins, the point where heartache becomes wisdom, and the pull to what's not meant for us gently fades away, replaced by the quiet strength of choosing ourselves. Chapter 4. The Dance of Narcissism and Codependency. Why narcissists and codependents are like opposite poles of a magnet. Narcissists and codependents can feel like two sides of the same coin, forever spinning in a dance that keeps them intertwined. While one craves admiration and control, the other seeks validation and approval, creating a magnetic attraction fueled by their differing desires. Imagine two people at a party. One person is loudly confident, regaling tales of their accomplishments, while the other quietly nods, reflecting admiration and desire for connection. This dynamic forms a pull that can be hard to resist. It's as if their emotional landscapes are opposite ends of a spectrum, yet together, they form a complete picture. The intoxicating cycle: admiration, dependency, and collapse. There's a moment when admiration stops being just a simple feeling and starts turning into something much more complicated, like a mirror that refuses to reflect your true self back to you. Instead, it shows the version of you that you think the other person sees. It pulls you in with a kind of gravity that feels sweet at first, like sunlight warming your skin after a long winter. But that warmth can blur into a trap where your sense of worth begins to hinge entirely on the approval and gaze of someone else. Suddenly, you're caught in this delicate dance where every step is choreographed by their reactions, every breath measured by their attention. You might not even notice at first how slowly you start bending, reshaping yourself to fit the mold of being admired. Admiration feels like a gaze that doesn't just see you, it sculpts you. It creates a reflection that's intoxicating, as if you're finally the person you've always wanted to be. But here's the catch: the reflection doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the other. We often mistake this for love or connection, but it's closer to a kind of illusion, a seductive feedback loop that can start to drown out our own voice. You might find yourself replaying past compliments, clinging to tiny gestures, or reading far too much into a smile. It's not just about wanting to be liked anymore, it's about needing to be seen, and the problem starts when your self-worth becomes hinged on that fragile thread. This is where the rhythm of the dance grows tense, and the air thickens with anticipation. You become both the dancer and the dance floor, fragile and shifting beneath the weight of someone else's focus. Admiration can build you up in a way that feels like flying, but it also lays the blueprints for dependency, an unsteady bridge that trembles under every step you take towards needing more than just acknowledgement. It's intoxicating because it feeds the part of us that craves validation, but it's a kind of feeding that eventually leaves your insides hollow. The seed of dependency takes root quietly, often unnoticed. What begins as encouragement morphs into a necessity, and suddenly, you're holding your breath, waiting for the next nod, the next sign that you're still worth looking at. Dependency is like being tied to a fragile thread, one that vibrates with every shift in mood, every change in attention. You start to map your days and feelings around this silent contract of approval, unaware of how deep the roots have burrowed into your sense of self. It isn't about weakness, but about how our brains and hearts are wired to connect. We were built for relationships, yes, but not to lose ourselves entirely inside another's eyes. That delicate balance rests on a knife edge. When the dependency starts to crack, when admiration falters or ceases, the ground beneath you quakes and then crumbles. Suddenly, the mirror shatters, scattering fragmented reflections that can't be pieced back together the same way. The empty echo in a quiet room where there once was laughter can feel deafening. You confront the rawness of craving, that desperate ache for validation that has been driving your choices and blurring your vision. The collapse forces a reckoning with hunger you barely admitted you had, the hunger to matter, to be seen, to be enough without the need to perform or polish an image for an audience. It can feel like losing your balance on a tightrope stretched thin across a canyon. You look down, dizzy with the fall that seems inevitable. In the wreckage, the silence can scream loudest, and the reflection you've been holding onto is nowhere to be found. This is not a failure but a rupture that exposes the parts of you that were leaning too hard on someone else's gaze for strength. Amid this collapse, there is also an opportunity, messy and painful, to gather the cracked pieces of yourself. The craving for validation does not disappear overnight, but you start sensing that perhaps what you need is recognition from within. If you find yourself caught in this cycle, try pausing at the edge of the collapse and ask, what part of me has been living in the shadow of another's eyes? What have I been willing to lose to stay admired? The next time you feel the pull of admiration like a tide dragging you away, breathe into the moment and test your ground. Can you feel your worth without the reflection? Can you find a place inside that does not need words or looks to be real? It won't be simple, and there will be days when the old rhythms beckon again. But little, by leaning into your own gaze instead of someone else's, you begin loosening the hold of dependency and discovering a steadier rhythm, the one that exists when you move through the world as yourself, no mirror required. Human story, a couple where one craves control, the other craves approval, and how this dynamic spirals. Picture this, two people, each holding a different mirror, trying to see themselves clearly. One man or woman wants everything to be just right, micromanaging every detail, making sure the world bends to their will. They pull the strings of daily life, believing that control is the only thing that keeps chaos at bay. Their partner, meanwhile, stands opposite, searching for validation in the smallest of gestures. Every compliment, every sign of approval, feels like a lifeline to them. This push and pull often looks like a slow whirl, where power struggles and ask for permission behaviors become normal. The more control the first person exerts, the more the other seeks reassurance, and the cycle spins faster and faster. It's like watching a kind of dance, where neither leader nor follower ever quite relaxes into something natural. The person craving control feels incomplete without the feeling of power. Their mind whispers that if they let go, everything might fall apart: their job, their role, their sense of worth. The one craving approval worries that if they don't succeed in earning affection, they will vanish into the background, invisible and unimportant. It becomes hard to tell where control ends and approval begins, because both are trying to fill the same emptiness with different tools. Over time, this constant pushing and chasing strips away authenticity, leaving behind a version of themselves that's more about performing and less about being. Both come to see each other as obstacles instead of partners. And yet, beneath the surface, they really want the same thing: love that feels solid and true, not temporary or earned through effort alone. Beneath their actions, these two people are often hiding the same core fears. The one who needs control is scared that if they don't hold tight, everything will slip away: their reputation, their influence, their place in the world. Controlling becomes their armor, a way to quiet the inner voice that whispers, "You're not enough unless you're in charge." On the other side, the one craving approval fears being left behind, forgotten, or unloved if they stop trying to earn affection through their efforts. They wear their need for validation like a badge, hoping that if they can get enough praise, they'll finally feel seen. Both of these fears turn into a kind of addiction, needing to control, needing to be approved. They feed each other like a circle of flames, each feeding the other's hunger while burning away any real connection. This cycle grows heavier over time, often without anyone noticing. Their interactions become less about genuine connection and more about managing perceptions. The control freak might micromanage small details, not because those details matter, but because letting go feels terrifying. Meanwhile, the approval seeker might do anything to receive a kind word, a smile, or a sign of love, even if it's given out of obligation rather than authenticity. Both are fighting to feel safe, but in doing so, they strip the relationship of real intimacy. The truth is, neither is really being themselves. Control and approval act like masks, hiding the vulnerable bits where true life and love bloom. When this goes on long enough, the lines between who they are and who they pretend to be become so blurred that they forget what's real, what's true, and what they're actually longing for. The withdrawal stage: why leaving feels like breaking an addiction. Leaving a situation can feel astonishingly similar to battling an addiction. You might not think of it as an addiction at first, but that initial pang of separation, like the quiet twin of heartbreak, hints at the deeper ties that bind us to what we know. There's an almost primal instinct to retreat to comfort, doesn't it? After all, we are creatures of habit. Leaving behind a job, a relationship, or even a place where we have invested our hopes and dreams sends us into a chaotic spiral. It's not just about letting go. It's about stepping away from something that once consumed your thoughts and energy, almost like a drug. The way our minds oscillate between relief and regret reveals just how deeply intertwined our identities become with the situations we choose to engage in. The silence that follows can be deafening, an eerie quiet where echoes of memories linger. The mind races with what ifs, and the heart wrestles with feelings of inadequacy. It's tempting to think that leaving should feel liberating, like shedding an old skin. Yet, the truth often looks different. It feels more like a withdrawal, a wrestling match where both sides are vying for control. The joy of freedom is weighed down by the unease of the unknown, and suddenly, you're fighting an unmarked battle with an unseen foe. When you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, it can help to center yourself. Take a moment to sit in silence, breathe deeply, and reflect on one thing, one single moment of joy from that past experience. Holding on to that memory can help ease the transition as you prepare to step forward. After all, each step you take holds the promise of new beginnings. Chapter 5. Toxic Magnets. Why we chase people who hurt us. There's something inside us that's drawn to familiarity, even when that familiarity is wrapped in pain. Our brains are wired to notice patterns and predict what's next because uncertainty feels like walking a tightrope without a net. If someone has hurt us before, yet keeps coming back into our lives, it can feel oddly comforting in a twisted way. It's like knowing the rhythm of a bad song. You hate it, but you know exactly when and how it plays. This isn't just about masochism or a lack of self-worth. It's about the brain's deep hunger to make sense of experience, to cling to what's known, even if that known is uneven ground. When chaos is your default setting, even familiar pain is easier to hold onto than an unfamiliar piece that demands you learn something new or let go of control. Inside your brain, the chemicals responsible for bonding, like oxytocin and dopamine, play tricks. The rush of adrenaline when things flare up awakens our senses and can inadvertently feel like passion. You start to confuse the spikes in your emotions with connection. The hurt becomes intertwined with hope, the hope they might change, or that you might finally be understood. It can feel like chasing a shadow but stopping just short when it disappears, still hoping it will return. This chemical cocktail cements a cycle in your nervous system that whispers, "Stay. You're safe here, somehow." The ache becomes a strange kind of home. And when someone hurts you, it triggers primal survival instincts more than modern reasoning. Our ancestors needed to hold onto social bonds to survive, even if those bonds weren't perfect. These ancient wiring and chemicals don't know your modern heartbreaks, they just want you to stick close. On top of the biological pull, there's a story we tell ourselves that keeps us tethered. Maybe you tell yourself you're the one who can fix this person, or that if you just try harder, things will be different next time. Some of us grew up watching love look like bruises wrapped in apologies, and that becomes our blueprint. It's the same way a child learns the shape of the sky by what's above their head. When the people around you taught you that love meant getting through pain together, it leaves a deep mark. So, the chase is sometimes less about the other person and more about trying to rewrite your story to something better than what you knew. But rewriting isn't easy when every chapter feels like the same sentence on repeat. Resistance is tricky because these relationships often plug into unsolved wounds inside us. The parts where we feel unseen or unworthy scream the loudest when the person who hurt us pulls away. It's like they hold a mirror to our own vulnerabilities, and backing off feels like tearing that fragile mirror apart. Subconsciously, this triggers a hunger to be seen, to be held, and to make meaning out of the chaos. You hold tight not just to the person but to the hope that staying close will somehow fill what feels empty inside. That feeling can be suffocating without ever feeling like enough air. It's fighting against the urge to run while being stuck in quicksand. The harder you fight, the deeper you get tangled. There's also a deep fear that breaks you away from these bonds might mean facing isolation or an unknown sense of self. What would life look like without this person, even if they hurt you? Some moments feel like standing at a cliff's edge without a parachute, where the fall is uncertain but the leap necessary. The emotional patterns that bind you replicate because they're familiar scripts your mind learned early on, scripts written with fear, hope, and survival instincts. When you try to leave or resist, it's not just about avoiding physical presence but confronting what's inside. You become a magnet not just for the toxic patterns but for the stories you've wrapped around your identity. Breaking free means untangling those threads, feeling the rawness of what's been hidden, and slowly learning to hold the quiet parts inside you without needing to fill them with chaos. Slow shifts happen when you allow yourself to feel the discomfort rather than run from it. Notice the urge to reach out, to chase, and ask, what is this really telling me? Sometimes, the biggest revelation is recognizing how much power you've already given away to a story that no longer serves you. Start small by naming the moments you feel triggered and what they bring up inside. Whisper to yourself through those moments, this feeling doesn't control me. It's not about rushing away from pain but greeting it with soft curiosity, like meeting a guest you don't want but can't ignore. Over time, these gentle pauses create space to step back and say no to old patterns. And one whisper at a time, you reclaim a piece of yourself that's been wrapped up in someone else's chaos. The illusion of intensity equals intimacy. Have you ever met someone and felt that immediate spark, that electric current that makes your heart race? It's tempting to think that burst of energy, that rush of emotion, equals closeness. But think for a moment, those fireworks often burn bright and fast, leaving behind ashes more than warmth. Passion can sweep us off our feet, but it doesn't necessarily build bridges between two souls. When we get caught up in the storm of feelings, how loud the laughter, how intense the conversations, we might forget that real intimacy is quieter. It's in the subtle glances, the shared silence on lazy Sunday mornings, the gentle knowing that doesn't demand fireworks. We tend to chase the sensation of being consumed by someone, confusing that with genuine closeness. But deep connection doesn't blare like a siren. It whispers, earbuds in, tuned to the frequency of mutual knitting. There's a kind of allure in the sudden flash, the quick thrill, the passionate storm that leaves us breathless. It's like lighting a match against dry leaves, an instant burst of heat that catches all our attention. We often become addicted to these sparks, needing one jolt after another, thinking that's the true essence of connection. But those sparks fade fast. What they leave behind is often ashes or disappointment. True closeness, the kind that lasts through seasons and setbacks, doesn't blaze with intensity every second. Instead, it's built on small, consistent acts, sharing coffee without rushing, listening through long pauses, showing up day after day without expecting a grand gesture. These gentle fires, though quiet, create a warmth that endures longer than any fireworks display. They remind us that real intimacy lives in the slow burn, in the patience of mutual presence. So, when you notice yourself craving that quick rush, ask, what am I longing for? Could it be that I'm hungry for trust, steadiness, or simply someone to stay when the storm has passed? It's easy to get swept up in the thrill, but it's the slow, steady warmth that melts the icy layers around our hearts. Learning to appreciate that gentle flicker requires practice, deliberately slowing down and valuing the quiet moments as much as the loud ones. After all, a small fire can become a cozy, enduring hearth, if tended to daily. It's worth remembering, the glow of patience and consistency far outshines the brief brilliance of passing sparks. How trauma bonds masquerade as soulmates. Trauma bonds can sneak into our lives, often dressed up as something beautiful like love or soulmates. It's inspiring how easily we can mistake a feeling of intense connection for something pure. We believe we've found our person, the one who understands us deeply. But these connections can sometimes stem from pain and hardship rather than mutual growth and respect. Think about it. When two people share struggles, those experiences can create a sense of urgency and depth that feels special. But rather than being built on healthy foundations, these bonds can create a mirage, a relationship that appears solid but is actually fraught with unresolved issues and fears. So how does this happen? It begins with moments of shared vulnerability. You might confide in someone, sharing your darkest fears or deepest hopes. This creates a sense of intimacy that feels like magic. Suddenly, you're bonded in a way that's different from friendships or casual partnerships. Yet, instead of this bringing healing, it often draws people closer in a way that stems from their wounds rather than their wholeness. The other person's emotional chaos can mirror your own, giving off an illusion that you complete each other, while the reality might be more about filling that urgent void rather than nurturing a tender connection. Tunneling deeper into this concept uncovers how trauma bonds often reflect unmet needs from our past. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, or where conflict was frequent and unresolved. When someone comes into your life who triggers those familiar feelings, it might feel right, like coming home. But in reality, it's a reminder of how we used to cope with emotional hardship. Yes, these bonds can be intense and fulfilling in the moment, but the excitement can distract us from the underlying fear that forms the foundation of this connection. When you recognize these early warning signs, take a step back and examine your relationships. Reflect on what you genuinely need from those around you. It might help to consider moments of silence where you feel the space rather than intensity. That's where insight often finds you, between the chaos and quiet. Chapter 6. Polarity and Passion. Masculine and feminine energies, beyond gender. Masculine and feminine energies are often tossed around as if they belong strictly to men and women, but that's a shortcut that hides a richer truth. These energies aren't about chromosomes or clothing choices, they're about the way we move through life, feel inside, and relate to others. Think of them like two rivers running beneath the surface of our personalities, sometimes intertwining, sometimes flowing apart. The masculine energy tends to carry qualities like action, focus, structure, and a drive to solve problems, while the feminine energy tends to cradle qualities of receptivity, intuition, emotional expression, and nurturing. Neither is better or worse. They complement each other like night and day or thunder and rain, and we each carry some measure of both. Inside us, these energies ripple and shift depending on what's going on. There's no fixed point. A single person can be grounded in strength and action during the workday, then soften into patience and deep listening when resting with loved ones. Noticing where these energies show up helps us understand our inner world. When we feel stuck or unbalanced, it's often because one energy is drowning out the other. For example, too much masculine energy might feel like pushing through exhaustion, tuning out feelings, or trying to control everything, whereas an excess of feminine energy might feel like sinking into indecision or dissolving boundaries. By tuning into these subtle currents, we open a way to richer self-awareness that doesn't depend on gender roles or stereotypes. These energies also influence how we connect with others. The way someone expresses their power or vulnerability, how they handle conflict or intimacy, often reflects their dance with masculine and feminine forces inside. Imagine a conversation where one person's energy feels sharp and direct, while the other's is soft and flowing. Neither is right or wrong, just different approaches expressing an unseen spectrum. Recognizing this dances away expectations and invites curiosity, allowing relationships to deepen beyond surface performances, beyond the boxes we try to fit each other into. Learning to sense these energies inside yourself starts with quiet moments of observation, without judgment or demand. What parts of your day call you to be decisive, clear, or assertive? When do you feel invited to retreat, listen, or nurture? There is no single right way to carry these energies. It's more like tuning into an internal weather system. Sometimes, stubborn resistance to one way feels like a knot in the chest. Maybe you habitually lean into action and control because softness scares you, or maybe you retreat into feeling and avoid decision-making because chaos feels safer than conflict. Noticing these patterns brings choice back into your hands. When you start to recognize the interplay of these energies, you begin to move between them with more ease, like shifting gears instead of being stuck in one speed. That shift creates spaciousness inside and around you that makes relationships feel less heavy or drained. You might find that showing vulnerability, a feminine energy, in the right moment adds power to your presence, or that setting a firm boundary, a masculine energy, is a form of deep care. It's not about fitting into preconceived molds, but learning to become fluent in a language of energy that's always moving beneath the surface. In practical terms, this could look like pausing before reacting to breathe into whatever energy you feel called to express. It might mean saying no firmly when something doesn't feel right, or leaning into a moment of silence to really hear someone else without trying to fix it. It can also mean embracing contradictions, being both tender and strong, open and guarded, calm and passionate. This flow is where authenticity lives, inviting connections that feel alive instead of scripted. And yes, it's awkward sometimes. You might stumble, trip over old habits, or surprise yourself with unexpected emotions. That's the groove of growth. One small practice to try: when you notice a strong emotion, instead of quickly reacting, ask yourself what energy is coming forward and whether that energy feels solid, flowing, constricted, or expansive. This simple pause can shift how you show up for yourself and others. A small step, but the kind that echoes in quiet, meaningful ways. Why polarity creates attraction but not always stability. Think about how we are naturally attracted to people who are different from us. It's that thrill of the unknown, the way opposites seem to complete a puzzle. Someone who is wildly different from you can turn everyday life into an adventure, filling your days with sparks and surprises. This pull often feels like an irresistible magnet, pulling us closer because the contrast makes everything feel more alive. But here's the catch: that same difference can keep the relationship from finding a steady rhythm. The very qualities that draw us in, the differences, can also be the ones that create friction when we start to rely on each other for stability. The passion born from contrast can burn hot, but it doesn't always lay a foundation that lasts through storms or quiet nights. It's kind of like how two dancers with wildly different styles might be exciting to watch, but they struggle to stay in step when things get tough. The attraction is immediate because the chemistry lies in what's unfamiliar or opposite. Still, without shared values or common ground, the structure that keeps a relationship lasting begins to falter. That initial spark comes from the thrill of difference, someone's quirks, passions, or beliefs that shake up your world. If you've ever been drawn to someone who is way outside your usual type, you probably felt that zing of excitement. But over time, if those differences aren't balanced with some shared understanding, the cracks start showing. That's when the flame flickers, and the stability you once imagined begins to slip away. When two different energies collide and create that strong pull, it's often because our brains are wired to seek novelty. There's a rush, the thrill of discovering someone new, learning their secrets, and feeling like you've finally found something rare. That sense of excitement is like a drug. It floods your system with adrenaline and makes everything seem brighter. But relates to the nature of opposites. As alluring as they are initially, they also come with more challenges. Without a solid foundation of understanding, patience, and shared goals, those sparks tend to flicker out. The differences that once made you feel alive can turn into disagreements, misunderstandings, or feelings of instability. Imagine two people with entirely different personality types trying to build a life together without realizing they're speaking different emotional languages. One might crave spontaneity while the other needs routine. Early on, that contrast sparks curiosity and attraction. Yet, without mutual effort to bridge the gap, it's easy for frustration to build. The unpredictability of opposites keeps things lively, but it can also turn into chaos when no one takes the time to align their energies. The lesson here: attraction based solely on polarity is like building a house on quicksand. It can look beautiful and exciting at first, but without a strong core, it's destined to wobble or collapse under pressure. How balance shifts when one person dominates. In many relationships, one person tends to take the lead. At first, it feels like a natural flow, a partnership where each individual plays their part. But over time, this dynamic can shift dramatically. When one partner consistently dominates, it can create an imbalance that stifles not just the relationship but also the individuals involved. Imagine a dance where one partner twirls and spins with abandon while the other is left to simply follow along, lost in the shadows. It's a beautiful performance until the follower starts to feel invisible. That's when things get tricky. The passion that once ignited the relationship can quickly turn into frustration or resentment. This shift isn't often blatant. It's subtle, creeping in under the guise of safety and comfort. You might feel that settling into the groove with someone strong is easier than challenging them. But at what cost? When one person grabs the reins all the time, the other may start to second-guess their own needs and wants. Suddenly, the sparks of passion wane, leaving behind a familiarity that feels more like a cozy blanket than an exciting adventure. The thrill fades as the dance becomes predictable, and with it, the desire for deeper connection. It's crucial to recognize these changes early. The balance can tip from harmony to chaos without anyone even realizing it's happening. Recognizing when one person takes charge in a relationship is the first step to navigating these quiet power shifts. It's essential to pay attention to how you feel when the balance swings one way or the other. Do you find joy in the shared experiences, or do moments feel more obligatory? Ask yourself, when was the last time you spoke up for what you wanted? The truth is, it's not just about keeping scores or checking boxes. It's about nurturing a connection where both partners feel empowered to be themselves. This requires open conversations, a willingness to listen, and the courage to express preferences or boundaries, no matter how small they seem. Chapter 7. The Chemistry versus Compatibility Divide. Fireworks versus Foundation, Learning to Tell the Difference. There's a kind of magic in that first flash, the rush that feels like lightning striking right inside your chest. Fireworks are loud, bright, explosive, and they make us believe anything is possible for the night they glow. But the thing about fireworks is that they burn out fast. What looks dazzling might be nothing more than a spectacle, a moment caught in the flash that doesn't reveal what's truly holding everything up underneath. The crackling, sparkling burst hides all the cracks beneath the surface, the shaky bits that only time and quiet moments reveal. You can get swept away by the rush, the crackle, the heat, and convince yourself the show will never end. It's easy to confuse that sudden light with something steady, because the world wants us to be dazzled, to chase what makes us gasp, what quickens our pulse. But fireworks don't tell you how dark the sky was before they flared up, or how quickly they vanish into smoke and silence. In the same way, early thrills in a relationship can mask the things you can't see yet, the doubts, the mismatched rhythms, the ways your edges don't quite fit. What blinds us isn't just the blaze itself, but the way it tricks us into thinking the fire will never come down to embers. The truth is, the brightest flames are often the most fragile. Sometimes, what feels like fireworks is just sparks flickering against thin paper, and the paper will tear the moment you lean in too close. There's a temptation to confuse passion with solidity, to measure connection by the size of the flash rather than the weight of the support. But a foundation doesn't roar, it hums quietly, steady as a breath in your chest. It doesn't grab your attention with a bang but holds it gently through calm mornings and unremarkable afternoons. That's what fireworks hide, the need for something unflashy, but real. And seeing beyond the flash means learning to notice what holds up the world after the noise dies down. When the sparks fly, it's like walking into a room filled with laughter and flashing lights, overwhelming, intoxicating, hard to ignore. But if you step back and listen closely, there's a quieter rhythm beneath the storm. Moments of ease between two people, the way their silences feel safe instead of empty, the soft habit of shared routines. These are the signs that don't shout but whisper what lasts. It's not the fireworks that tell you what will endure. It's the way you feel when the sky is dark again and the cool air settles on your skin like a promise. Waiting feels slow and frustrating when the heart's screaming for the next burst, but patience isn't just a bore, it's an act of bravery. It's saying yes to the small moments, the ones that don't look like much at first. Like laying bricks one by one without a grand gesture. In learning to distinguish the quick thrill from deeper compatibility, you're training your soul to read the in-betweens. The way someone recalls your favorite coffee without fuss, how they hold your mood without trying to fix it, the moments of weirdness and silence that don't push you away but pull you closer. These gentle signs matter because they build trust, something fireworks can never do. Patience also means being aware of the ways your own heart jumps too soon. Sometimes we want fireworks because the alternative, quiet progress, feels like admitting the world isn't made from magic alone. But real connection isn't always spectacular. It's a slow simmer, a widening orbit where comfort and challenges have a dance, not a battle. Learning to tell the difference between fleeting excitement and lasting bond means tuning out the noise and learning to hear the softer signals. The warmth of a shared glance, the resilience in disagreement, the space to be imperfect and still be loved. And if you can find joy in the waiting, that's when you start to understand what's real beneath it all. Try this. Next time your heart races with excitement, pause for a breath and ask yourself how this connection feels on a rainy Tuesday, when nothing's new and the world feels heavier. Does it hold or slip away? The answer is rarely in the big fireworks, but in the quiet sunrise that follows. That's where the real light lives. Why high highs often mean low lows. Think about the most memorable moments in a relationship, those moments when everything feels electric, as if the world has momentarily stopped spinning. It's when you're caught up in a wave of euphoria, the kind that makes your chest feel tight and your heart race. But often, those high moments are accompanied by a sudden fall into low points, silence that feels deafening or disagreements that leave you questioning everything. That roller coaster effect isn't accidental. It's part of how our emotions are wired. When we experience intense happiness or passion, our brains release a flood of chemicals like dopamine and adrenaline, which make everything seem brighter and more urgent. Yet, just as quickly, those feelings can crash, leaving us feeling empty or anxious, wondering if that high was worth the inevitable crash that follows. This push and pull create what feels like a wild dance, sometimes graceful, sometimes clumsy. If you've ever felt like love is a game of riding a wild stallion, you know how the highs lift you but also leave you exhausted when the beast bucks. The reason it's so tempting to chase the high is because, in that moment, life seems full of possibility. The adrenaline, the connection, the sense of being truly seen. These are moments that feel like an affirmation that love, for all its messiness, is worth fighting for. But the flip side is that when the lows come, those moments of doubt, anger, or disconnection, they can hit hard enough to shake your confidence or even make you question if love is worth the pain. This constant surge between feeling on top of the world and then sinking back into the mud creates a turbulent landscape that's hard to navigate. Part of why we chase these intense highs is rooted deep in the way our brains are built. From childhood, many of us learn that love and approval come wrapped up in excitement and unpredictability. Think of the drama in movies or stories from people we admire. Our minds start to associate love with feeling alive, energized, even a little out of control. When someone makes our heart race, our brain interprets that as attraction and interest, often overlooking the chaos beneath. It's a pattern that can stick for years, encouraging us to seek out chaos rather than quiet companionship. And here's the thing, those high moments hijack our attention, giving us a fleeting sense of worth or adventure. But what we miss is that meaning isn't built in the peaks. It's in the steady, quiet moments that follow, the days when love shows itself in small gestures rather than fireworks. Understanding how we're wired can begin to break this cycle. It's like realizing you're chasing a mirage. The more you run after it, the farther away it seems. If you start noticing how your heart lurches for the thrill, you can begin to pause and question what's really going on. Is this high worth the inevitable low that comes afterward? Is this pattern keeping you from tasting the calmer, richer parts of love that don't light up your nerves but nurture your soul? Recognizing these tendencies doesn't mean you must change overnight, but it does mean you are more conscious of how your desire for excitement might be hiding a longing for security or deeper connection. Sometimes, it's simply about learning to enjoy the quiet, like savoring a cup of tea when the room feels still rather than rushing toward another fireworks display. If you can catch yourself in the act of craving the next big thrill, you start to reclaim some control. Instead of chasing the rush, you can practice appreciating the subtle, everyday moments, like a shared look at the end of the day or the warmth of a hand in yours. When you see the pattern clearly, it's easier to choose love that is strong enough to weather the lows. Because, at the end of the day, love isn't a thrill ride. It's a slow, steady walk through seasons, some bright and others shadowed. The trick is knowing that both are needed, that the high highs will pass, but the low lows don't have to swallow you whole if you're grounded enough to notice what's really happening beneath the surface. The subtle signs of real compatibility that often feel too calm at first. Real compatibility often slips under the radar, hidden beneath the rush of loud conversations and surface-level interactions. It's the whispered connections that create a sense of familiarity, more than the loud proclamations of love or passion. This quiet form of harmony is easy to miss if your heart is tuned to dramatic displays of affection or grand gestures. Think of compatibility as that gentle sigh of relief you feel when you settle into your favorite chair after a long day. It's comforting and effortless, but you might overlook it when frantic thoughts demand your attention. The little things matter, how your laughter seems to blend, how silence between you feels comfortable, or the way a shared glance can ignite a sense of understanding without words. Those subtleties, small moments that may feel insignificant, are often the building blocks of a profound connection. Learning to recognize these subtle signals can feel daunting, especially in a world that often amplifies the dramatic and diminishes the quiet. We've been trained to chase the exhilarating highs that come with new love, but isn't it interesting how often true connection arrives quietly? Imagine leaning in close to someone and realizing their presence brings a sense of calm, like a favorite song playing softly in the background. Think about those moments when laughter arises over a shared joke that only the two of you understand. It's those small experiences that weave an intricate fabric of connection. These moments ground you and remind you that love doesn't always have to be a roller coaster. Sometimes it feels more like a steady stream flowing gently through your life. Trusting in these signs asks for a shift in observation. Instead of seeking the loudest affirmations, consider the quiet but poignant moments, the way your partner instinctively knows what you need when you're stressed, or how a shared smile can lift your spirits after a long day. It's about noticing how your heart feels when you're together versus the anxious ruminations that creep in when you're apart. It's okay to acknowledge the discomfort of uncertainty. Embrace it as part of your journey, and let it teach you to deepen your understanding of true compatibility. Reflect on your experiences, and allow those quiet connections to speak. After all, Sometimes the most powerful truths are those barely whispered, waiting to be heard. Chapter 8. The Inner Magnet. You don't just attract who you want, you attract who you are. Sometimes it feels like we're casting a net out into the world, hoping to haul in what we desire: friends, partners, opportunities, yet the fish that come up often aren't quite what we expected. This isn't about bad luck or random chance. The people and experiences you draw into your life reflect something deeper, the quiet landscape inside you that whispers louder than your conscious wishes. It's as if the world around you acts like a mirror, showing back pieces of yourself you might not even know are there. When you say you want kindness but spend time wrapped in harsh self-talk, or crave honesty but keep parts of yourself hidden, then the relationships that form tend to echo that tension. The universe you walk through responds to the frequency you're sending out. Your habits, your fears, your joys, all tangled up into a magnetic field that either pulls in or pushes away. This is not to blame anyone or everything, but to recognize that attraction is less about what we say we want and more about who we are becoming at our core. Think about the people you find yourself returning to again and again. Maybe there's a pattern, a kind of energy or conversation style, a way they relate that feels familiar. This is the invisible thread linking your inner self to the outer world. The more complicated, messy, or unresolved your feelings are inside, the more complicated and messy the relationships you attract might get. If life is bringing in people who drain your energy or stir up old wounds, that points to something within waiting for attention. That's not a punishment, it's an offer to look closer, to sift through the layers you might have shoved under the rug. And if you're wondering why a friend who promises loyalty disappears when times get hard, or why you keep meeting people who don't see or respect your boundaries, it's often because the blueprint of your inner world hasn't shifted. Like training a plant to grow in a certain direction, your habits and beliefs shape the soil where your life's garden takes root. One way to picture this is imagining a room filled with light but cluttered with shadows. The light wants to shine, it wants to reveal warmth. The shadows, though, are those hidden parts, unspoken fears, old pains, unresolved grief, that tangle up the space. Until you rearrange the furniture inside that room, clear out what no longer serves, invite the light to stay, the shadows will keep making the atmosphere feel cold or heavy, no matter how bright you try to make the bulbs outside. The people who come in and out of your life respond to that lighting. Some will match the cool shadows, others will gravitate toward the warm parts. Neither is bad. Both are part of the natural ebb and flow of connection, reflecting your own inner experience playing out in human form. To change the pattern, it's less about finding the right people somewhere out there and more about becoming the person who naturally draws those people in. This means turning inward, sometimes uncomfortably so, and facing the parts of yourself you've avoided or minimized. Self-awareness isn't just a trendy buzzword, it's the first step toward authentic connection. When you know what your soft spots are, how you respond when you feel hurt or joyful, and what values truly move you, you stop wearing masks that confuse even yourself. It's like tuning an instrument before a concert. Without tuning, no matter how skilled the player, the notes can't sing. When you develop honest self-awareness, your life's melody shifts in tone, and who you attract will follow suit. Authenticity doesn't mean laying out every part of yourself to anyone who shows up. It means knowing what parts of you deserve protection and which want more room to breathe. It's a delicate dance between vulnerability and boundaries. This balance is magnetic because it signals respect for yourself and the people around you. Imagine someone who quietly holds their confidence, not because they're perfect, but because they've accepted their imperfections and brought them to light without shame. That kind of person invites others to relax, to feel safe being themselves, and it changes the energy of the room. That energy is what pulls in people aligned with your truest self, not the fragments you try to hide or change to fit some imagined ideal. Starting with small, honest moments in everyday life can open the door. Maybe it's saying no when you want to say no, even if it feels awkward. Or letting a friend see your tiredness without pretending to have it all together. You could spend 5 minutes each day reflecting on your reactions. What made you feel alive? What drained you? This kind of attention rewires your internal compass over time. You begin to notice that when you stop chasing the outer versions of acceptance or love and instead ask, what do I need to feel seen and honored right now? You tap into a different kind of magnetism. One that's rooted less in performance and more in presence. If you find yourself doubting, wondering if you're enough, Remind yourself that this process isn't about hitting some perfect target, but about growing more comfortable in your own skin, cracks and all. Yes, the cracks can leak a little sometimes, like a cracked teacup, but they also hold the sunlight in unexpected ways. The people who come into your life when you carry yourself with this kind of quiet honesty won't try to fill or fix those cracks. Instead, they'll bring their own light to share, creating a space where both of you can settle into something real, messy, and wonderfully alive. Here's a tip. Practice noticing how you respond when someone mirrors back parts of yourself you'd rather not see. Do you shut down, blame, or run? Or can you lean in a little and ask yourself what that person's presence is reflecting right now? That reflection is a secret gift, disguised as discomfort. When you start working with these moments, your attraction shifts from chasing what feels good in the short term to inviting what nourishes in the long term. And bit by bit, the people who show up won't just look like your dreams, they'll feel like home. Self-worth as the magnet that decides who sticks around. Think about the vibe you give off when you walk into a room. Sometimes it's easy to say you're confident, but other times it's more like a quiet whisper, begging for reassurance. Our inner sense of worth, the way we see ourselves deep down, works like this invisible magnet. It pulls in people and experiences that match or mirror how we feel about ourselves. When we carry a strong belief that we deserve kindness, respect, and love, others tend to treat us accordingly. On the flip side, if we secretly believe we aren't enough or that love is hard to find, we might attract the very things that reinforce those truths. So, the kind of people who stick around, whether they're friends, lovers, or even colleagues, often reflect how strongly we hold our own value. It's like giving off an energy signal that says, "I've got this," or "I'm not quite sure I do," and the universe responds accordingly. In this way, your worth isn't just a quiet thought inside, it becomes the filter for who gets close and who fades away. Here's the honest bit. Often, the people who stay are the ones who see you clearly, even when you're not entirely sure of yourself. They notice your little cracks, your doubts, and your humor, and they choose to remain. It's not about perfection, it's about alignment. When your inner voice whispers, "I am enough," and you mean it, those who resonate with that vibe will stick around naturally. If your inner voice is more like, "Maybe I'm okay sometimes," you might find yourself caught in a loop, a friendship or relationship where you're constantly trying to prove your worth. So, who stays? Those who see your worth even when you forget it yourself. That's because they recognize something familiar: the struggle, the courage, the continual process of learning to believe in your own value. When you realize your worth isn't something you drum up with effort, but a truth you accept, those genuine connections come more easily, sticking around like trusted old friends. Understanding this dynamic can be a game changer. Instead of stressing over who walks away, you start to notice the patterns. Are you giving your best to people who rarely appreciate it? Are you shrinking yourself to fit into a mold that doesn't reflect who you really are? Sometimes, the reason people leave is because they're not the right match for the version of yourself that's coming into clearer focus. When you start to treat your own worth as sacred, to speak to yourself with kindness, you subtly reshape the kind of energy you radiate. That energy attracts others who see value in the same way. Think of it like tuning a radio. When your frequency matches your true worth, the signals from the right people can finally come through loud and clear. Who sticks around when you embrace your worth? The ones who see it, reflect it back, and stay for the long haul, not because of you being perfect, but because you are real. One of the simplest ways to nurture your self-worth is to remind yourself regularly that your value isn't based on how others see you. Starting each day with a small affirmation, something like "I am enough" or "I deserve love," can slowly change your internal dialogue. It's like watering a plant that's been starved. Over time, the fragile shoots grow stronger. Be aware of how you talk about yourself, especially during tough moments. Instead of calling yourself a mess, try saying, "I'm doing my best right now," or "It's okay to not have it all together today." The words you choose influence how you feel deep down, and they send a subtle signal that you see your own worth. Making space for your feelings, even the uncomfortable ones, is another way to grow self-respect. When you acknowledge your doubts without drowning in them, you reinforce the idea that your worth isn't shaken by temporary flaws or setbacks. Another practical step is to set boundaries that protect your energy. When someone repeatedly dismisses your ideas or makes you feel small, it's a sign that your worth isn't being honored. Learning to say no, even when it feels uncomfortable, sends a clear message: you matter enough to protect your peace. Boundaries aren't walls, they're invitations for genuine respect. Surrounding yourself with people who cheer your wins and hold space for your vulnerabilities helps establish a healthier baseline for how you see yourself. Over time, this creates a network of support that reinforces your confidence, not because you're perfect, but because you dare to stand up for yourself. Finally, practice acts of kindness toward yourself, especially when you fail or stumble. Treat yourself like you would a dear friend, offer praise for effort, forgive mistakes, and remember that your worth isn't tied to perfection. When you do this, you're teaching your inner voice to trust in your inherent value. Remember, building a sense of worth is less about fixing yourself and more about trusting that who you are in this moment is enough. It's about choosing daily to see yourself with compassion, to acknowledge your strengths, and to accept your flaws without judgment. By holding your own worth as an unshakable truth, you naturally attract people who recognize and mirror that same worth back to you. And the more you trust that this is your right, the fewer people have the power to make you feel small or unseen. The real secret is that those who truly want to stay will cherish you for exactly who you are, not who you pretend to be, or how little you believe you deserve to be loved. Personal reflection exercise: what does my attraction say about me? Sometimes, the heart knows what the mind struggles to articulate. Every attraction we feel, whether it's to a person, a hobby, or even a place, offers a window into our deepest selves. Take a moment to notice the types of people who catch your eye. Are they adventurous, nurturing, or perhaps effortlessly creative? Each of these attractions holds a story, a reflection of your own desires, dreams, and perhaps even fears. By recognizing these patterns, you start to see a bigger picture. You can ask yourself questions like, what qualities in them resonate with me? Or what does that say about what I might be longing for in my own life? Maybe you're drawn to someone outgoing when you often feel shy. This could indicate a longing for that same freedom in yourself or a wish to step beyond your comfort zone. It can be enlightening to explore how these attractions serve you. They may highlight aspirations you haven't yet chased. Alternatively, consider those whom you seem to avoid. Do they bring to mind parts of yourself you're not ready to face? These patterns can be quite telling and might provoke a giggle or a sigh as you connect the dots. Taking this reflection exercise to the next level means giving yourself permission to really feel. Grab a notebook, find a cozy corner, and let your pen dance across the page. Start by jotting down recent attractions, names, faces, qualities, experiences. You can feel the energy of these moments ripple through you as you write. What emotions surface? Excitement, nostalgia, perhaps a pang of longing? Explore these feelings and expand on them. For instance, if a particular person comes to mind, write about an interaction you had with them. What stood out to you? How did it make you feel? While you write, allow stories to emerge, stories that weave together your past, present, and dreams for the future. You might catch yourself smiling at a memory or frowning as you dig up an old hurt. That's okay. Embrace it all, knowing that awareness is like shining a light in the shadows. It may reveal undercurrents of self-doubt, joy, or hope that you hadn't realized were there. As you connect those dots from your attractions to your feelings, you'll find that each insight is a stepping stone toward understanding yourself deeper. By the end of this exercise, you might walk away with not just reflections, but actionable insights into what you really want moving forward. Practice this regularly to hone your self-awareness and create a clearer picture of what drives you. Remember, it's not about judging your feelings but simply bearing witness to them. Each insight gained is a little treasure that can lead you toward a life that resonates more closely with who you really are. Chapter 9. Rewiring the Pull. Can we change who we're drawn to? There's something almost mysterious about the people we feel pulled toward. Sometimes it's like an invisible thread, tugging us toward someone without us fully understanding why. These attractions often feel set in stone, like they're carved deep into who we are. Maybe it's the way someone laughs, the curve of their smile, or even a pattern we don't recognize consciously but recognize deep down anyway. Our history, early experiences, and the stories we carry about ourselves all layer together, creating these magnetic pulls that seem beyond our control. Imagine an old vinyl record, scratched and faded, playing the same tune over and over. Sometimes the song changes, but often it just keeps spinning the same melody. Looking closely, you might begin to see that these attractions aren't random. Evolution wired us to notice certain traits because they once meant safety or promise. Childhood teaches us a script of what love looked or felt like based on our caregivers and surroundings, almost like an invisible blueprint. Whether it's someone who feels familiar because they echo memories of a parent, or someone wildly opposite yet thrilling in their unpredictability, these patterns nestle into our nervous system. And there's something comforting in knowing what to expect, even if that comfort feels more like a quietly humming ache. But what if those old patterns aren't the only version of attraction we can know? What if that record can scratch a little differently over time? Now, this is where things start to get interesting. And, honestly, a little messy. The truth is, even though those early attractions feel like the bedrock of who we are, they can shift. Not overnight, and not without some discomfort, but change is possible. Imagine unlearning a dance you've done 1,000 times, only to relearn new moves that feel awkward at first but start to feel more natural with practice. Our brains aren't static, they're spongy, capable of surprising rewiring. When you start to notice other qualities in people, or begin to question what actually feels good rather than what you've been told should feel good, that old pull loosens a bit. It doesn't mean previous attractions were wrong or toxic, just that you've grown to want something different, or you've healed enough to see new patterns. What does it take to shift those attractions? Sometimes it begins with small, quiet moments of awareness. Like catching yourself attracted to someone you wouldn't have noticed before, or finding yourself drawn to qualities you used to dismiss. It can also mean stepping outside your usual type and paying attention without judgment. The heart can be surprisingly curious when given the chance. Real change might ask you to sit with discomfort, like realizing that the magnetic pull you used to chase left you more emptied than full. This shift doesn't erase what you felt. It recalibrates your inner compass. Sometimes, it's less about what you're attracted to and more about understanding the needs and wounds those attractions were answering. When you crack that, the game starts to change. Think of it like a river cutting new paths after a season of heavy rain. The original course remains, but water finds new routes, carving fresh banks until something new feels like home. You can invite your heart to explore these new channels by spending time where your curiosity points, allowing yourself a little creative freedom with who you let in. Nobody's saying to force attraction, because real connection can't be faked for long. But giving yourself permission to see people differently, to listen to what feels alive rather than familiar, turns out to be the key to transformation. And yes, it's work, and just as often it's play, experimentation, and the kind of stumbles that make you laugh at how stubborn the heart can be. One gentle reminder, shifting who you're drawn to isn't a switch you flip and then forget about. It's more like rewiring an old lamp. The bulb needs replacing, the wiring must be reconfigured, and the whole process might make the lights flicker for a while. Those flickers are part of learning a new rhythm inside yourself. So, if you find yourself looking twice at someone unexpected or feeling a new kind of flutter for qualities you hadn't noticed before, that's a sign something's blooming beneath the surface. These changes can ripple through your whole experience, changing the stories you tell yourself, the way you move through relationships, and how you show up for connection. Here's a practical way to start. Pay close attention to moments when your body responds to someone and ask, what am I really hungry for here? Is it safety, excitement, understanding, or maybe something else? Write down what you notice without judgment. Over time, this record becomes a mirror helping to catch new patterns. Awareness is like the first sunlight touching a sleeping garden. It doesn't change everything at once, but it sets the stage for growth. And yes, I'm still figuring this out myself. Some nights, the old songs play louder than I'd like. But the space for new melodies is always waiting, if we're willing to listen. Healing attachment wounds and rewiring attraction patterns. Sometimes, these wounds stay buried beneath layers of daily life, whispering in the background with every relationship. They show up as a feeling that something's missing or as a fear that love will someday leave. When we look closely, we realize that much of our heartbreak or longing stems from these old stories, like scars from a childhood we barely remember but still carry. Recognizing their presence is like turning on a dim light in a dark room. Suddenly, things start to make sense. We begin to see how some choices we made, the patterns we follow, all trace back to those early experiences that never quite healed. These wounds are often made up of a mixture of feelings: abandonment, neglect, or the belief that we're not enough. They're like invisible threads weaving through our sense of self, pulling us toward familiarity, even if it hurts. Sometimes, we cling to the very relationships that mirror those old wounds, as if seeking resolution in the chaos. It's awkward to admit these hidden stories exist, but once we face them, they become something we can work with. It's not about blaming anyone from the past, but about understanding how our story has shaped the way we love and get loved now. To start healing, we need to acknowledge these wounds gently, like tending to a delicate seed. Rushing won't do. Reflect on moments when love felt unpredictable or when you found yourself repeating painful cycles. Ask yourself if certain patterns show up again and again, like a song stuck in your head. Sometimes, writing down a childhood memory or a recurring feeling can help bring these hidden stories into daylight. Remember, healing isn't about erasing the past, but about changing how it lives within us today, giving ourselves permission to rewrite the next chapters with more kindness and awareness. Once you start seeing the roots of your attachment wounds, the next step is gently shifting how you relate to love. It's like updating an old map. Foundations are the same, but the routes you take now are different. First, notice which patterns keep repeating without judgment. Maybe it's always falling for unavailable people, or getting stuck in conflict, or attracting partners who mirror family wounds. Recognizing these is not about blame, but about understanding the wiring beneath your choices. After that, it's about rewriting that wiring, small, steady steps that help you see love as a safe space, not a battlefield. Practicing self-compassion becomes your ally here. Forgive yourself for past mistakes, because every pattern was born from a desire to feel loved, protected, or seen. Rewire your attraction by intentionally choosing different kinds of moments or people. Instead of rushing toward familiar shapes, pause and ask if this new path aligns with your healthier self. It's helpful to build a new story, one where you listen to your intuition, set boundaries without guilt, and trust that love doesn't have to hurt. Over time, these small changes accumulate into a new blueprint, gradually shifting how your wiring responds to love and connection. Remember, this process involves patience, and patience isn't about waiting. It's about staying present through each stumble and slip. Journaling about your feelings after an encounter or practicing loving kindness toward yourself can reinforce your new patterns. Change isn't about perfection, but about showing up for yourself again and again, refusing to let old fears dictate your future. Eventually, the attraction you once thought was fixed shifts into a more nourishing, genuine form, one rooted in your true self rather than old, quiet wounds. Replacing addiction with resonance. Addiction often emerges from a deep yearning for something we believe will fill a gap within ourselves. It's not just about substances or behaviors. It's the tangible expression of an emotional void. Picture this: you're standing alone on a busy street, surrounded by people yet feeling invisible. That pull to seek out something, alcohol, drugs, or even a compulsive hobby, starts to make sense. It feels comforting, like a warm blanket on a cold night, but often it's just a facade masking deeper issues. The high is enticing, briefly distracting from a harsher reality, but it tends to leave you emptier than before. Creating resonance in life is about cultivating intimacy with ourselves and others. It's learning to stand in the soft glow of vulnerability instead of hiding behind walls of addiction. Imagine leaning into a conversation where every word builds a bridge, where you share laughter and worries alike, instead of retreating into distractions. When you begin to allow love to flow naturally, you discover the beauty of connection. Instead of the temporary high from a substance, there's a profound and lasting joy in witnessing shared experiences and genuine emotions. Chapter 10. The Gravity of Healthy Love. How healthy relationships feel: safe but not dull, exciting but not chaotic. There's a strange comfort that settles in when you're with someone who makes you feel completely safe. It's not the kind of safety that feels like a padded cell, restricted and lifeless, but more like a worn-in sweater on a chilly day. You know it's there to protect you, warm you up, and never let the cold get near your skin. In healthy relationships, safety means trust has taken root. You don't have to play games or wear masks. You can speak your fears out loud, reveal your shame, or admit you don't have it all figured out, and be met with steady, clean warmth. It's in the quiet moments when your hand finds theirs without thinking, and the space between words feels comfortable, not loaded. But here's the catch: feeling safe doesn't mean the heart goes on autopilot. In fact, when two people truly trust each other, the relationship isn't a slow drift into dullness. Instead, it's like a garden where weeds are kept at bay so the flowers can bloom. The safety creates room for curiosity, for small surprises, for those moments when you notice a change in the way they laugh or the way their eyes catch the light. It's about knowing that being yourself is enough and still having wide open eyes for the person across from you. You don't settle into routine boredom because you never settled for pretending you were something less than real. Think of safety in this way. It's not a cage, but a net woven from patience and respect, catching you when you fall without holding you down. And yes, sometimes the net shakes when you both stumble, but it never lets go. This steadiness is what deepens connection, quietly weaving trust into the fabric of love that holds yet breathes. Now, the word exciting often gets tangled with drama, the kind that leaves your stomach in knots and your mind spinning like it's caught in a storm. But healthy love feels different at its core. It's not the roller coaster that throws you off balance. It's more like riding a familiar river, fast enough to make your heart race but steady enough to trust that you won't be swallowed whole. You feel it not just in your head but deep in your bones, the spark that crackles quietly between two people who are fully present with one another. That kind of excitement is grounded, alive in the everyday as much as in the special moments. It's the light teasing that makes you laugh until your ribs ache, the shared secret glance across the room that says, "We're in on something." It's waking up some mornings with a flutter, anticipating a conversation, a touch, or just the way they say your name. This thrill isn't born from confusion or constant upheaval. It grows from the freshness of being seen and known at once. It's the contrast of predictability seasoned with tiny, unexpected shifts, like a sudden breeze that carries the scent of rain across dry earth. To keep that spark alive without letting it burn down the house requires a kind of dance, one that balances freedom and closeness. There's room for play and spontaneity, but also a calm respect for each person's space. It's knowing when to lean in and when to breathe out. This rhythm creates a pulse that keeps two hearts tuned to each other, vibrant without spinning out of control. Healthy relationships invite you to live fully, both in moments of sweet stability and in the surge of shared discovery, without falling into chaos or losing yourself. It's easy to confuse safety with boredom or excitement with drama. When you're tired, you might think routine means love is dying, or when things get passionate, you might wonder if you've stepped into a storm you don't want to fight through again. But real connection lives in the stretch between those points, the steady beat that invites you closer, not pushes you away, and the spark that keeps your whole body alert, not exhausted. Ask yourself, where do you feel calm with another person, without falling asleep? When does your heart race with them, without pounding in fear? These moments are the clearest signals that you're walking alongside someone who honors both the quiet and the fire inside you. It's okay when the space shifts. Sometimes safe spaces ask you to be vulnerable, and sometimes excitement asks you to slow down and listen. Missing that rhythm is part of being human. Missing it for too long is what makes your heart ache. One way to nourish this balance is by staying curious about your own needs and honest about your limits. Notice when safe starts to feel like a cage, or when exciting turns into shaky ground. Talk about these feelings with the person beside you. Sometimes just naming the difference between a healthy thrill and a chaotic drop brings clarity. It's a conversation worth having on a lazy Sunday afternoon or during those whispered moments in bed when everything else quiets down. Relationships don't thrive on silence as much as they do on the courage to share both comfort and unrest. Try this. The next time you find yourself restless or too cozy, pause and ask what your body is telling you. Are you craving more closeness, or does your soul need space to breathe? Checking in with yourself helps prevent the slippery slide into dullness or chaos. Over time, this gentle awareness becomes a language you and your partner can share, one that honors the safe and the thrilling without confusing the two. The beauty of attraction that deepens, not burns out. There's something quietly powerful about attraction that's built on real understanding. When two people meet and genuinely see each other, beyond surface charms and quick smiles, the spark shifts. It stops being a sudden flare that burns out fast, and instead becomes a steady, comforting warmth. Think of it like a campfire. If you throw on some good logs and nurture it, it stays alive through the night. The initial rush might fade, but the glow remains, ready to warm you when you need it most. That kind of connection takes patience and presence, not just adrenaline or instant attraction. What makes this warmth different? It's rooted in trust and shared moments. When you connect deeply, it's as if you're tuning into a frequency that only you and the other person can pick up. The fire doesn't need constant stoking to keep burning. It feeds off the little things, meaningful conversations, shared silence, knowing you can lean on each other without fear. It's about building a foundation that can handle the winds and storms without blowing out in a puff of smoke. Over time, this substance transforms the initial sparks into something resilient, something that deeply sustains both hearts involved. Love that deepens isn't about constant fireworks. It's about those quiet moments when, looking back, you realize how much richer everything feels now, even if it's less loud. When passion is allowed to grow naturally, it takes on more layers. It's like a forest that becomes thicker and more varied with each year. The real secret? Giving space for change, for differences, for the messy bits that don't quite fit the neat picture you once had. These are what make the connection richer. Love starts as a spark, but if it's cared for, it becomes a steady stream that feeds every part of your life, not just the butterflies in your stomach. There's no need for grand gestures every day. Instead, focus on small, consistent acts, a warm smile, a listening ear, an honest apology, a shared laugh. These are the things that might seem simple but carve deep grooves into the landscape of your relationship. Over time, they become the soil in which love's roots grow stronger. The idea isn't to chase fleeting passion but to nurture it patiently, giving it time to grow into something that can weather seasons of uncertainty or boredom. Just like a forest, love thrives best when it's allowed to evolve gradually, shaping itself into something sustainable and alive. Real love as gravity, steady, grounding, and mutual. Real love functions like the invisible force of gravity, drawing two souls together toward a shared center. Imagine walking with someone you trust, their presence offering you a sense of unwavering safety. It's not about explosive moments. It's in the simple comfort of knowing you can lean into that connection without fear. Think of it as a steady pull that grounds you, where you find solace in each other's company. It's an anchor during storms, a soft place to land when the world feels heavy. Here, vulnerability doesn't feel risky. It feels like freedom. When you open up, you create space for the other person to do the same, allowing both of you to explore your true selves without restrictions or the fear of judgment. Healthy love isn't a wild ride filled with drama or tension. Instead, it's about creating a safe environment where trust flourishes. It's not always exciting in the traditional sense, no dazzling fireworks exploding in the sky. It's more like a cozy evening spent talking about your hopes and fears, where deep conversations feel like the best form of adventure. It's in the shared laughter over inside jokes or quiet moments where the silence feels comfortable rather than awkward. Each partner learns to ground the other, balancing strengths and weaknesses in a way that creates a unique rhythm to the relationship. This balance isn't just about support. It's about creating an aura where both can grow independently and together. In relationships built on this fundamental understanding, love becomes a sanctuary where you can be your true self. It fosters a climate of empathy and patience, where mistakes are merely stepping stones, not stumbling blocks. You no longer seek validation from external sources, as you find reassurance in the space your relationship has created. The best part? You don't have to be perfect, you simply have to be real. So next time you're feeling overwhelmed, take a breath and remember that love should be your safety net, not the high wire act. It's about finding that peace of knowing someone stands with you, grounded and steadfast. As you navigate this beautiful mess we call life, consider how you can create that gravitational pull in your own relationships. Give it your all, not just because it's expected but because you genuinely want to. After all, real love is expressed in the mundane moments, not just the grand gestures. Chapter 11. Becoming Magnetic. Why authenticity is the strongest magnet. Imagine a lighthouse standing tall on a foggy night, its beam cutting through the mist, guiding ships safely toward shore. That beam doesn't try to be anything other than itself, it just shines. Authenticity in a book works in the same way. It doesn't twist or mold itself to fit some imagined ideal but stays true, raw, and honest. Readers don't just read words, they feel the presence behind them. When a book carries that sense of genuine voice, it pulls people in without effort, because something deep inside recognizes the truth. It's that instinctive draw toward something real, something that carries the weight of a lived experience rather than empty words masked as wisdom. That feeling, like warm light in a dark world, is irresistible. Authenticity magnetizes because it offers a sanctuary from the polished, staged, and sanitized versions of life that flood our daily existence. When someone cracks open a book filled with genuine struggles, little victories, awkward moments, and unspoken fears, it's like eavesdropping on a heartfelt conversation. You don't have to pretend or perform. The imperfections invite you in. Instead of a smooth-surfaced object that feels cold and distant, it's more like a well-worn sweater you can sink into. The moments where an author reveals their cracks, sometimes barely held together, make the story breathe. It's not about perfection. It's about being palpable, tangible, and human. That pulls readers closer like gravity, making them feel understood and seen. Books that aren't authentic often come off as hollow echoes, polished to hide the very soul readers search for. Without that invisible thread of honesty, a book risks becoming just another object on a shelf. But when authenticity shines through, readers don't just finish the pages, they carry the book's spirit with them. They remember it as a friend's voice in the quiet hours or a whispered truth they stumbled upon. That kind of magnetism stirs something inside, a recognition that this is not just a story, but part of the human experience laid bare. Getting to the heart of your true self on the page can feel like standing naked in front of a crowd. It's terrifying, and it's tempting to hide behind polished language or safe topics. But here's the secret that took me far too long to learn. Vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's your strongest pull. Showing your rough edges, your faults, even your confusion, invites readers to unbutton their own armor. Instead of distancing them, imperfections build bridges. When an author admits they fumbled, freaked out, or stumbled in front of their own shadows, readers say, "Me too." Those moments become a shared heartbeat, a place where reader and writer meet across the page. This kind of realness doesn't come from spilling every secret or laying everything bare at once. It's more like tuning into the right frequency. Being authentic means you're willing to show what feels significant to you. That might be a quiet moment of doubt, a sudden burst of joy, or the lingering ache of something unresolved. In that honesty, you discover a magnetic force that balances strength with softness. Readers don't need you to be flawless, they need you to be honest enough to be relatable. That vulnerability transforms writing from something distant and decorative into a living conversation, one that invites readers to bring parts of themselves along for the ride. It's easier said than done to embrace your flaws on the page. Fear of judgment or rejection still lingers like an old shadow. But small steps toward authenticity quickly build momentum. You might start with a single moment, the smell of rain on a certain street corner, a memory that still stings, or a fleeting feeling that no one could know. Writing that truth breaks open a door, letting authentic light spill in. From there, the rest starts to flow more easily because authenticity is contagious. Once you've admitted a piece of yourself, the rest feels less daunting. Try this. Imagine a time when you felt seen, not just noticed, but truly understood. That feeling is the kind of connection your book can create when you write with your real self leading the way. Let the imperfections slide around the edges like cracks in a teacup, not something to hide but part of the design. Trust that the unique pattern of your experience, shaped by vulnerability and honesty, is exactly what will draw others to your words like moths to light. Being authentic asks you to lean in with all your humanness, knowing that's the strongest magnet there is. How self-awareness, purpose, and wholeness radiate. Think about the last time someone looked at you and seemed to see right through to what's real. No masks, no pretenses. That's what genuine self-awareness does. It's a mirror that reflects not just your surface but the truth beneath. When we peel back the layers of who we pretend to be and face our inner truths, we begin to see ourselves with a clarity that can be startling. This honesty isn't about judgment. It's about recognizing the genuine person hiding behind the stories we tell ourselves. The more we get comfortable with our own reflection, the more authentic we become, and strangely enough, others start drawn in by that quiet honesty. There's a kind of magnetism in vulnerability, in showing up as ourselves, flaws and all. It's as if, in that honesty, we become luminous, lighting the way for others to feel safe enough to drop their own masks. Self-awareness acts like a gentle thread running through our interactions, stitching together trust and openness. When you understand why you react a certain way, why you feel uneasy in some situations, or why certain words hit a nerve, you start to step out of the chaos of instinct and into a clearer space. It's not about perfection, but about understanding what's real, what makes you light up, what dims your spark. This insight often slips in quietly, through a moment of stillness, a deep sigh, or that odd feeling when someone's words scrape just right. As you become friendlier with your own truth, you notice others responding differently, more open, more compassionate, more willing to connect genuinely. Self-awareness builds a kind of invisible bridge. People sense when someone is being authentic, and that feeling pulls them closer, craving the same honesty they see shining from within. Purpose isn't something we find at the end of a roadmap or by reaching a particular goal. It's more like a thread woven into the fabric of each day, often unnoticed but always present if you pay attention. When we live with a sense of purpose, it's as if our inner light becomes visible in small ways, through our choices, our attention to what matters, and the way we carry ourselves. Wholeness, on the other hand, is not about becoming perfect. It's about embracing the messy, beautiful patchwork of your life, the cracks, the scars, the moments of doubt. These pieces aren't defects, but parts of the design that make you uniquely you. Living this way, with an awareness of your own purpose and acceptance of your wholeness, naturally attracts others. It's a gentle pull, like the moon's gravity, that encourages others to wake up to their own threads and start weaving their stories with authenticity. This idea of purpose and wholeness as living, breathing threads means that every choice, every breath, contributes to an overall sense of being in tune with yourself. When you act from a genuine sense of direction, whether it's caring for someone, creating something meaningful, or simply showing up, you radiate a quiet strength. That strength becomes magnetic because it's rooted in truth, not in pretend. It's in the small acts of kindness, the sincere conversations, and the quiet moments of reflection that this purpose shows itself. Others pick up on it, drawn in without even realizing it. They feel safe around someone who is comfortable with who they are, flaws included. Think of a calm pond on a still morning. When something disturbs the surface, the ripples spread out softly, touching everything in their path. This is how self-awareness, purpose, and wholeness interact. They shape your inner world, influencing how you move through life, creating waves that reach others without effort. When you truly see yourself, flaws and brilliance alike, it becomes easier to live with a sense of purpose, what you're here for, what makes your soul come alive. This sense of wholeness isn't about fixing or completing, but about accepting all of who you are and letting that acceptance shine through. As you do, others start noticing. They feel the calm confidence that comes from within, and it draws them closer. Connections aren't forced, they're a natural extension of your own steady presence. Living with this awareness is like tending a garden, watering the parts of yourself that need love, trimming back the stories that no longer serve you, and letting your true colors emerge naturally. The more genuine you become, the easier it is for others to see themselves reflected in you. Their own stories become visible in your authenticity, and suddenly, the world feels more connected, more human. It's a gentle dance, your inner peace and openness inviting others to step closer, to share their own truth. In this dance, purpose is the rhythm, wholeness the melody, and self-awareness the harmony that keeps everything in tune, creating a living, breathing masterpiece of connection and trust. Remember, these qualities aren't something to chase after relentlessly. They are threads that strengthen when we pay attention, when we pause long enough to feel our own pulse. So sometimes, the best thing you can do is simply check in with yourself. Notice what's alive, what's waiting to be seen, and what's calling you back to your own essence. That quiet act of awareness, of aligning with your purpose and accepting your whole self, is enough to start shaping a life that naturally radiates warmth and authenticity. Love as attraction through alignment, not chasing. Imagine for a moment that love manifests not from frantic pursuit, but rather from deep, authentic alignment with yourself. Think of it as standing in your truth, a space where you feel at peace. When you express who you genuinely are, your energy transforms. It's like tuning an old radio to the right frequency. Suddenly, everything around you feels clearer, and the right people start showing up. They are drawn to your essence, your laughter, your quirks, and your wisdom. It's as if you've opened a door, and they can sense the warmth and light radiating from you. This is not to say that there won't be moments of vulnerability. Indeed, those cracks in your armor are where the light seeps through. It's about being comfortable enough in your skin that you don't need to chase validation from others. This magnetic attraction through alignment is crucial. Picture your favorite cozy spot at home, where you feel completely at ease. That's the kind of energy you want to cultivate in your life. When you find peace within, you send out ripples of energy that invite others into your world. This is not a superficial connection based on appearances, but rather a bond formed through shared values, interests, and the genuine recognition of one another's souls. So, how do you build this alignment? Begin with some introspection and reflect on your values, passions, and experiences. What makes your heart race? What do you long to manifest in your life? By nurturing these aspects of yourself, you create a powerful foundation that naturally draws the right people toward you. Once you cultivate that alignment, the next step is surrender. Imagine love as a dance, not the awkward stumbling that often happens when we chase after what we think we should want, but a flowing rhythm that feels like second nature. By letting go of control and trusting the rhythm of your life, you find that love can unfold organically. Think about how a great dance happens. Both partners are in tune, responding to each other's movements with grace and spontaneity. It's this interplay that makes the experience beautiful. You don't have to work so hard, you just have to listen to the music. When you embrace your own true rhythm, you become less focused on the outcome of finding love, and more engaged in enjoying the journey. To invite this essence of alignment and surrender into your life, consider starting each day with a simple practice. Take time for quiet reflection, maybe with a cup of tea or while watching the sunrise. Ask yourself, what rhythm do I want to embody today? Let this guide your interactions and decisions. When you align with your true self, you'll find that love is no longer something you chase, but something that flows to you naturally. Conclusion. From pull to choice. Attraction is powerful, but it doesn't have to rule us. We often think about attraction like it's some wild river carrying us against our will, pulling us under and leaving us breathless. That feeling of being swept up, heart racing and sense spiraling, seems almost like magic or a curse. But what if I told you attraction isn't a force beyond your reach? Instead, it's more like a dance. Sometimes we stumble, step on toes, or lose the rhythm. But, with practice and awareness, we can guide the steps instead of being swept away by them. It may feel like an overpowering force, but attraction doesn't have to catch you off guard or hold your hands like a puppet on a string. Imagine the difference between being a leaf tossed on a stormy lake and being a sailor who knows how to read the winds. At first, attraction can feel like that storm, messy, unpredictable, chaotic. And yes, the heart loves to fool us with sudden fireworks or quick jolts, but beneath all that, there's movement and choice. You might notice how certain sights, scents, or even a voice stir something deep within you. That initial spark? It's biology, chemistry, history bundled up in an instant. But what you do next, that is your dance. You can follow the impulse blindly, or you can pause, breathe, and invite yourself to lead the rhythm. There's freedom in recognizing attraction is a dance, not a trap. When you realize you have the power to decide how to respond, the whole experience changes. The heart's wild leaps no longer have to mean losing control. Instead, they can be your invited partner into something more mindful. You get to choose when to lean in, when to step back, and occasionally, when to twirl wildly just because you want to. This awareness doesn't cool the fire but tames it, bringing the heat instead of burning up. That flicker inside you, that sudden urge to lean towards someone or something, doesn't have to be obeyed on the spot. It's okay to hold the feeling for a moment, like a fragile bird in your hands, and decide what to do with it. We tend to believe attraction means go every time, but sometimes, the power lies in saying not now or slow down. This shift allows you to catch those moments when attraction nudges you toward old patterns you might not want to repeat. Maybe it's the magnetic draw toward a drama that's left scars before, or the charm of someone who makes your knees shake but also your gut tighten. Attraction doesn't judge or care, it simply pulls. What makes the difference is what you bring back to the moment: curiosity, kindness, or even skepticism. You can train yourself to notice what's actually happening beneath the surface of desire, rather than just reacting to the spark. The growing space between feeling and acting is where freedom lives. You can learn to move with attraction instead of being moved by it. This doesn't mean denying your feelings or becoming cold. Instead, it's like adding a new color to your palette, a layer of awareness that brings depth and choice. You'll begin to see attraction as a whisper rather than a shout, a soft invitation rather than a binding command. And with practice, you might even laugh at your old rushes, shaking your head at how easy it was to let attraction run the show before you decided to dance along on your own terms. Here's a simple practice to try. The next time you feel that quick spark of attraction, whether to a person, an idea, or a thing, pause for just one slow breath before moving. Let yourself sit in that brief quiet. Notice what's really going on inside. Is it excitement? Nervousness? Hope? Fear? You don't have to act just because the feeling says so. Giving yourself this tiny space changes everything. The journey, from unconscious pull conscious choice. Imagine being carried by a river without really knowing its course. Sometimes, your thoughts, feelings, and actions seem to flow on their own, pulled by currents you're barely aware of. These unconscious pulls are like magnets, yanking us toward familiar patterns or reactions. They usually stem from stories we've told ourselves for years, stories rooted in fears, habits, or old wounds. Maybe you keep returning to the same type of relationship, always feeling drawn but never quite aware of why. Deep down, these pulls feel like an invitation to stay the same, even when part of you whispers it's time for something different. It's as if a voice from beneath the surface is gently tugging at your sleeve, urging you to stay safe, even if that safety is a cage. These pulls are not random. They're embedded in the layers of our subconscious, shaped by childhood experiences, cultural messages, and every little moment of pain or joy we've carried. Often, we're so unaware that we don't even realize why we're craving something or why we can't let go of certain feelings. The mind likes patterns. It finds comfort in what's familiar, even if it's not good for us. Because these urges happen without our noticing, they can feel like they come from outside ourselves, like a storm we have no control over. We move from one reaction to another, wondering why life feels so automatic, so set by unseen forces. Recognizing these pulls means tuning into what's really happening, listening just beneath the noise of daily life, where silent forces shape us in ways we don't fully understand yet. This is where the idea of awareness begins to take root. Instead of being a pawn in the game of your own impulses, you start to see the strings that connect your feelings, thoughts, and actions. Awareness is like flipping on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, those unconscious urges don't feel like mysterious ghosts anymore. They become visible, like shadow puppets you can study and understand. When you notice these behind-the-scenes influences, you're not just reacting blindly. Instead, you're seeing the patterns, the stories, the fears that fuel your reactions. It's uncomfortable at first, like waking up in a place you didn't realize you'd fallen asleep in. But that's where real change begins. Recognizing that you don't have to be swept away by old stories or habits. You can choose to gently steer your ship rather than letting the storm decide your course. It's about catching the moment when you're about to respond out of habit, and instead, pausing just long enough to ask yourself, is this what I truly want, or just the echoes of something old? Once you see these pulls clearly, the real work begins, consciously stepping into your power. Instead of feeling carried along by unseen currents, you begin to make choices grounded in awareness. It's like planting a flag in the ground and saying, "This is where I stand," even if the wind blows hard against you. These choices are small at first, a deep breath before reacting, a question in your mind, a pause to check in with your body. Over time, these moments pile up, building a new kind of momentum, one where you're in the driver's seat, even if the road is bumpy. The more you recognize what pulls you unconsciously, the more you can decide what direction fits your true self. It's messy. Sometimes you'll sway back into old habits, and that's part of the process. But each time you catch yourself, you're rewiring the way your mind works, turning automatic reactions into deliberate responses. That's where freedom lives, to step back long enough to notice, consider, and choose differently in the moments that truly count. Final message: love better by becoming whole first. Love truly starts from the inside. Before we can really connect with another person, we need to be comfortable in our own skin. Think about it. When you don't feel whole, every relationship can feel like a patch job, trying to fill gaps that were never ours to fill. It's easy to get lost in the idea that someone else can complete us, but that way of thinking is a setup for disappointment. When you start with yourself, flaws and all, you create a solid foundation. You embrace your quirks and your imperfections. You learn to cherish yourself, and that's the magic ingredient for love, a love that isn't needy, but rather overflowing. Can you recall those moments when you felt entirely yourself? Maybe it was when you were creating, or laughing with friends, or even in a quiet space alone with your thoughts. Those moments remind you that your completeness isn't tied to anyone else's validation. Embracing imperfections is a journey, not a destination. It means taking the time to look at yourself in the mirror and recognize that those little flaws make you unique. It's standing in front of that mirror and saying, "I am enough." Healing old wounds can be messy. It often involves facing past hurts you might have buried. Perhaps it's finding a quiet place to sit with those memories, allowing yourself to feel them, cry if you need to, and then gently putting them aside. It's like cleaning your house. Sometimes you have to sort through the clutter before you can enjoy the open space. Self-love isn't just a trendy term thrown around. It's an everyday practice. Try to set aside time for activities that nurture your spirit. Whether it's journaling, meditating, or simply sitting in a park with a good book, these moments help build that loving relationship with yourself. As you cultivate this inner wholeness, you'll notice that your relationships start to change, too. You stop looking for someone to fill a void and begin sharing your life with others who complement your fullness. Love becomes a shared adventure instead of a lifeline. This shift lets you engage more healthily and authentically with those around you. Imagine sharing a relationship where both parties stand tall, not leaning against each other for support, but growing together. That's the kind of love that lasts. Remember, every small step you take towards healing and embracing yourself leads you closer to a more genuine connection with others. Next time you're tempted to measure your worth by someone else's affection, pause for a moment. Reflect on how far you've come in loving yourself, because building that foundation is the key to love that truly flourishes. If you've walked with me through these pages, you already know, attraction isn't random. It's written in our biology, our memories, our patterns. The invisible pull has reasons, sometimes beautiful, sometimes heartbreaking. But now you also know something even more powerful. You're not powerless within it. You can honor the chemistry without being enslaved by it. You can feel the pull and still choose with wisdom. You can stop chasing the people who drain you, and instead align with those who nourish you. Love doesn't have to feel like an addiction. It can feel like gravity, steady, grounding, mutual. The truth is, we don't just love better by finding the right person. We love better by becoming whole. By turning inward, healing old wounds, and learning to see ourselves clearly. Because the strongest magnet in your life is you. Who you are determines what, and who, you draw in. So here's my invitation to you. Don't wait for love to rescue you. Don't settle for the chaos of toxic magnets or the high of fleeting sparks. Build the kind of love that lasts by first becoming the kind of person who no longer confuses pain for passion. And when you do, that invisible pull will shift. You'll find yourself drawn to people who are good for you, not just people who feel familiar. You'll fall into love that's steady, expansive, alive. Because in the end, love isn't about who you can't live without. It's about who helps you live more fully. May you find, and become, that kind of love. Written and published by Mindful Literary.